Welcome, brave souls, to another spine-chilling episode of our haunted storytelling series. Tonight, we journey through the misty fields and shadowed woods of Virginia, a state steeped in history and haunted by the restless spirits of its past. From the thunderous battles of the Civil War to the eerie whispers of long-forgotten skirmishes, Virginia's battlefields are not just historical sites, they are battlegrounds where the past refuses to rest. So, dim the lights, draw the curtains, and prepare to walk where the living fear to tread. These are the 25 most haunted battlefields in Virginia you should never visit at night. Cold Harbor Battlefield, nestled near Mechanicsville, Virginia, stands as a silent witness to one of the most devastating engagements of the American Civil War. Fought in June 1864, the battle left tens of thousands of soldiers dead or wounded, and today, long after the cannons have gone silent, the area still reverberates with the echoes of its bloody past. Those who visit this historic site often describe an unsettling sensation, as if the land itself carries the memory of suffering and loss, a lingering energy that refuses to fade with time. Many visitors report experiencing strange auditory phenomena as they walk the open fields. The soft rustle of the wind often gives way to something far more chilling: the distant crack of musket fire, the boom of artillery, and the rapid drumbeat of marching soldiers. Even on the quietest days, the sounds seem to come from nowhere, drifting across the landscape as though the battle has begun anew. Locals and historians alike have recounted tales of hearing commands shouted, orders barked in the heat of combat, only to find themselves standing alone, with no one in sight. The phenomenon is so consistent that some believe the very soil of Cold Harbor has absorbed the memories of those who fought and died here, replaying fragments of their final moments for anyone sensitive enough to perceive them. Ghostly apparitions have been reported across the battlefield, often appearing at dawn or dusk when the fog rolls in and visibility is low. Witnesses describe shadowy figures in faded gray and blue uniforms, trudging wearily across the fields as if still bound by the discipline of military life. These spectral soldiers are sometimes seen carrying rifles or dragging wounded comrades, only to vanish abruptly when approached. Hikers and history enthusiasts have recounted the eerie sensation of being watched, or feeling sudden chills as if a cold hand has brushed against their skin, moments before glimpsing a figure out of the corner of their eye. The terrain itself contributes to the haunting atmosphere. Rolling fields, dense tree lines, and isolated patches of swamp create pockets of visual ambiguity, where shadows can play tricks on the mind. Some visitors claim that paths they walked earlier appear altered on their return, with subtle changes in the landscape or footprints that vanish mysteriously. Others have found personal items, such as watches or jackets, inexplicably moved, as though invisible hands have interacted with them. These reports, while anecdotal, are so widespread that Cold Harbor has earned a reputation among paranormal enthusiasts as one of the most haunted Civil War sites in the country. Eyewitness accounts often share a recurring pattern: moments of intense emotional weight, sometimes triggered by standing near particular locations on the battlefield. Many describe feeling the overwhelming presence of sorrow and despair, a crushing sensation that seems to weigh down the chest. Visitors who pause at specific spots report hearing faint groans or cries, almost imperceptible, carried on the wind like the suffering of soldiers replayed through time. Photographers and videographers have even captured unexplained shadows in their frames, forms that vanish when viewed directly, leaving only a cold, empty field behind. Some of the most chilling stories involve encounters with spectral figures that appear human enough to evoke empathy, yet unmistakably ghostly in their behavior. A common report describes seeing a soldier kneeling beside a fallen comrade, brushing dirt over the body or cradling it protectively, only to turn and fade into the morning mist. Others tell of phantom cavalrymen galloping across the fields, their horses' hooves echoing with a hollow, metallic clatter that fades abruptly. These manifestations are often accompanied by a sensation of unease or an urgent warning, as if the spirits are attempting to communicate their final moments or unfulfilled tasks. In addition to visual and auditory phenomena, many visitors report unexplained temperature changes at Cold Harbor. Sudden cold spots, often localized and intense, appear without warning, sometimes coinciding with the presence of an apparition or an auditory hallucination. These chills can be so sharp that they make skin crawl or cause a shiver to run down the spine, reinforcing the perception that something otherworldly is at work. Some suggest that these temperature anomalies may be tied to residual energy left by the immense suffering that occurred here, a psychic imprint echoing across time. Local lore and historical research also contribute to the mystique of Cold Harbor. Accounts from soldiers who survived the battle describe scenes of horror and relentless combat, providing context for the lingering energy many now report. Families of fallen soldiers have passed down stories of dreams and premonitions in which relatives appeared to them, pleading or warning, long after the battle ended. The combination of documented tragedy and contemporary paranormal accounts has cemented Cold Harbor as a focal point for those interested in Civil War history, ghost hunting, and supernatural phenomena. The battlefield draws not only history enthusiasts, but also paranormal investigators seeking to document the unexplained. Numerous expeditions have been undertaken at night, using thermal cameras, EVP, electronic voice phenomena recorders, and other investigative tools. Many claim to capture faint voices, unexplained lights, and movement that cannot be attributed to animals or natural causes, while skeptics often attribute these experiences to psychological priming, environmental conditions, or imagination. The consistency and specificity of the reports have convinced many that Cold Harbor is indeed haunted, a place where the past refuses to stay buried. Visitors are advised to exercise caution when exploring the battlefield, particularly after dark. The combination of rugged terrain, fog, and a sense of the unknown can make even familiar areas disorienting. Yet, despite the danger and fear, people continue to be drawn here not merely for history, but for the chance to experience a place where the echoes of human courage, suffering, and death remain palpable. In the end, Cold Harbor Battlefield is more than just a historic site. It is a living memory of one of America's most harrowing battles. The musket fire that rattles in the ears of the living, the shadowy figures marching endlessly across fog-laden fields, and the chilling whispers that ride the wind all serve as reminders that the past is never truly gone. Those who tread these fields at dusk or in the eerie calm of early morning may feel the weight of history pressing close. A somber reminder that the cost of war is not measured merely in dates and statistics, but in the restless spirits that linger long after the last shot has been fired. Cold Harbor remains a place where history and the supernatural intertwine, a battlefield where time seems to blur and the dead refuse to rest. Every footstep on its soil may carry echoes of a past forever etched in sorrow, courage, and unending vigilance. A haunting legacy that beckons the living to witness, remember, and perhaps to understand. Sailors Creek Battlefield, located near Rice, Virginia, is a hallowed and haunting site, known for being one of the last major engagements of the American Civil War. Fought on April 6, 1865, it was a decisive clash during the Appomattox Campaign, resulting in significant casualties and marking the near end of the Confederacy. Today, visitors to the battlefield and its surrounding areas report experiences that suggest the echoes of the past are far from silent, with many accounts centered on the Overton Hillsman House, a historic home within the park known for its unnerving paranormal activity. The Overton Hillsman House, standing quietly among the rolling fields and wooded areas of the battlefield, dates back to the 19th century. Its walls, steeped in history, have witnessed the comings and goings of soldiers, the turmoil of war, and the lives of families who once called it home. Local lore holds that the house became a makeshift hospital during the battle, with wounded soldiers brought inside for care. The screams, moans, and frantic cries of dying men are said to have left a permanent mark on the house, an energy that manifests in eerie ways even today. Visitors to the Overton Hillsman House report hearing disembodied voices echoing through its empty halls, The sounds vary from faint whispers to anguished shouts, often rising in intensity during quiet hours when the house is devoid of life. Some have described hearing the names of soldiers being called out, as if the dead are seeking recognition or comfort. Others report the sound of dragging feet or hurried steps, pacing through rooms that no longer contain any furniture. Footsteps that stop abruptly when approached, leaving only silence and an icy chill. Shadowy figures are another common occurrence. Guests and explorers have reported glimpsing silhouettes dressed in period uniforms, sometimes seen carrying stretchers or attending to unseen casualties. These figures often vanish when observers attempt to approach, leaving only the sense that something unseen has moved past. Some witnesses claim to have seen the faint outline of a soldier at the top of the stairs, standing silently as though watching over the living intruders before disappearing into the darkness. Temperature anomalies are frequently reported throughout the Overton Hillsman house and the surrounding battlefield. Sudden cold spots appear without warning, often coinciding with the presence of a ghostly figure or the moment when a distant scream is heard. Visitors speak of walking from one room to another only to find the air inexplicably frigid, a stark contrast to the warmth of the day. These chilling experiences are accompanied by an oppressive feeling of dread, as though the pain and despair of the fallen have seeped into the very structure of the house and the soil beyond. The battlefield itself is not immune to paranormal phenomena. Sailor's Creek stretches across open fields, forests, and small creeks, and many have reported hearing the clash of battle long after the land has returned to peace. At dawn or dusk, witnesses describe the sounds of gunfire and cannon blasts that fade into the mist, only to return unexpectedly, startling the living. Some claim to see lines of soldiers moving across the fields, their uniforms indistinct but recognizable, disappearing abruptly when approached. The combination of mist, shadow, and historical weight creates an environment where the past feels almost tangible, pressing against the present in an unsettling embrace. A particularly chilling experience, reported by visitors, involves the sensation of being watched, even in the open fields, far from the Overton Hillsman house. Hikers and history enthusiasts have described the feeling of eyes upon them, an invisible presence, tracking their movements. Occasionally, phantom touches are reported, light brushes against arms or shoulders, never threatening, but deeply disconcerting, reinforcing the notion that the spirits of those who perished here remain tethered to the land, unable or unwilling to move on. Photographers and paranormal investigators have recorded unusual anomalies within the house and on the battlefield. Blurred or unexplained figures appear in photographs, lights flicker without cause, and EVP electronic voice phenomena. Recordings capture faint cries, murmurs, and commands that cannot be attributed to the living. These findings, while often debated, have convinced many that Sailor's Creek battlefield and the Overton Hillsman house are sites of genuine paranormal activity. Where the horrors of war have left indelible marks on the spiritual landscape, the Overton Hillsman house, in particular, seems to act as a focal point for these energies. Rooms that once served as wards for wounded soldiers are hotspots for strange occurrences. Objects move inexplicably, doors open and close on their own, and visitors often feel an invisible presence standing near them, observing or guiding. Some report seeing shadowy figures kneeling beside beds, tending to unseen injuries, a haunting mirror of the care and suffering that occurred over 150 years ago. Local legend adds to the chilling atmosphere. Residents and guides speak of ghostly reenactments that occasionally appear at night, soldiers marching, campfires flickering in the distance, the faint sound of medical supplies being prepared in the house. These tales are often recounted with a mixture of reverence and fear, as those who have witnessed such phenomena describe the experiences as profoundly unsettling yet historically poignant. Sailor's Creek battlefield and the Overton Hillsman house remain a magnet for historians, ghost hunters, and curious travelers alike. The battlefield's tragic history, coupled with the numerous reports of paranormal activity, creates a space where the past and present intertwine. A reminder that the echoes of human suffering do not always fade with time. Visitors are advised to exercise caution, respect, and mindfulness when exploring, as the land seems to respond to both the living and the lingering dead. In the end, Sailor's Creek Battlefield stands as more than just a site of historical significance. It is a place where the echoes of battle, despair, and unresolved spirits continue to shape the atmosphere. From the shadowy figures in the Overton Hillsman house to the spectral soldiers marching across misty fields, the haunting is ever present, a solemn reminder that history is not only written in books, but also etched into the land itself, waiting for those willing to witness its eerie truths. For anyone who walks these fields or explores the halls of the Overton Hillsman house, the past feels alive, pressing close, and never far behind. The whispers, footsteps, and spectral visions serve as an enduring testament to the lives lost and the restless spirits who still roam, ensuring that Sailor's Creek remains a place where history and the supernatural coexist in haunting harmony. Manassas National Battlefield Park, located in Northern Virginia, is a place where history and haunting converge in unsettling ways. Known primarily for the First and Second Battles of Bull Run during the American Civil War, this site has long been a silent witness to the bloodshed and chaos that occurred on its fields. Today, visitors often report that the echoes of the past are far from gone, with claims of paranormal activity adding a chilling layer to its historical significance. The park's open fields, wooded areas, and historic structures serve as a backdrop for ghostly manifestations that captivate and frighten those who tread its grounds. The First Battle of Bull Run, fought on July 21, 1861, and the Second Battle in August 1862, left thousands of soldiers dead or wounded. These large-scale conflicts created immense suffering, and many historians and paranormal enthusiasts believe that the intense trauma of the battlefield imprinted itself on the land. People visiting the park frequently report the sounds of gunfire and cannon blasts echoing through the early morning mist, even on days when no reenactment or event is taking place. The sudden, startling noises often appear without source, leaving witnesses tense and bewildered, as if history itself is replaying for an unseen audience. Apparitions are among the most commonly reported phenomena at Manassas. Visitors describe seeing soldiers in full Civil War uniforms moving silently through the fields, rifles slung over shoulders, or marching in formations that vanish when approached. Some claim to catch glimpses of officers giving commands, their figures shimmering in the heat of the day or fading into the shadows of the forested areas. Others report seeing wounded men lying where no one is present, only to find the space empty moments later. These spectral encounters often occur in areas where historical records indicate heavy casualties, suggesting that the land remembers the turmoil that occurred there. Wooded sections of the park, particularly near Bull Run Creek, are hotspots for ghostly sightings. People have described shadowy figures moving between the trees, vanishing as they draw near. In some cases, visitors report feeling the sensation of being watched, as if unseen eyes track their every step. Hikers and photographers alike have recounted sudden cold spots that descend from nowhere, often coinciding with the appearance of an apparition or the sound of faint cries and moans. The cold, oppressive air heightens the sense of unease, leaving many feeling they are intruding on a space where the living are unwelcome. Historic structures within the park also hold a reputation for paranormal activity. Homes and outbuildings that were used as field hospitals or command posts during the battles are said to retain residual energy. Witnesses have reported hearing anguished groans, whispered orders, and the clattering of equipment long since removed. Some visitors describe doors opening and closing on their own, while others feel a brush against their arms, as if unseen hands are passing by. These encounters contribute to the sense that the past is ever present, refusing to be confined to textbooks or plaques. Reenactors and park staff occasionally experience phenomena that defy explanation. Some report hearing the sound of distant marching and the clash of arms when the area is otherwise empty. Others have claimed to see misty figures moving along ridges or appearing briefly near stone walls that mark old encampments. Even seasoned historians, well-versed in the park's history, admit that the eerie sensations and unexplained visuals can be difficult to rationalize. For many, it is the weight of history itself that seems to awaken the restless spirits, drawing them into view for those sensitive enough to notice. Visitors also share stories of more subtle hauntings. Some report hearing whispers calling their names, while others feel sudden, inexplicable fatigue as they walk across certain fields. Photographers have captured strange light anomalies in their images, sometimes taking the form of blurred human shapes or faintly glowing orbs. Audio recorders have picked up low, guttural moans or whispered commands that cannot be attributed to any living source. These repeated experiences across different locations and times of day reinforce the belief that Manassas is not merely a place of history, but a living, breathing conduit for spirits bound by the horrors of war. The emotional impact of visiting Manassas National Battlefield Park is profound for many. Walking the same ground where thousands of soldiers fought and fell creates an undeniable connection to the past. When coupled with the accounts of paranormal activity, the park becomes a place where the boundary between the living and the dead feels thin. The lingering energy of fear, desperation, and sacrifice seems to echo through the air, allowing visitors to glimpse fleeting moments of life that once teemed on these battlefields. Many local legends have arisen around these experiences. Stories tell of soldiers seen helping fallen comrades, their figures transparent and moving silently. Others speak of commanders pacing the ridgelines, surveying troops who exist only in shadow. Some say that, on quiet evenings, the clash of swords and the cries of the wounded can still be faintly heard. A reminder that even after more than a century, the echoes of battle have not entirely faded. Manassas National Battlefield Park stands as both a historical treasure and a chilling reminder of war's lasting imprint. The combination of tragic history, eyewitness accounts of apparitions, and the unexplained sounds and sensations experienced by visitors creates a setting that feels alive with the past. For those who walk the fields, wander the wooded areas, or explore the old structures, the spirits of soldiers forever caught in the final moments of battle appear, ever present, bearing silent witness to the events that shaped the nation. In the end, Manassas is more than just a battlefield. It is a place where history and the supernatural collide, offering a haunting, immersive experience that cannot be found in books alone. The whispers, footsteps, and spectral visions serve as a solemn reminder of the lives lost and the ghosts who still roam, ensuring that anyone who visits this hallowed ground may feel the past reach out across time. Lingering in the mists and shadows of Manassas National Battlefield Park, Fredericksburg Battlefield, located in Virginia, is a haunting reminder of one of the most brutal confrontations of the American Civil War. The Battle of Fredericksburg, fought in December 1862, resulted in thousands of casualties, leaving a legacy of bloodshed that some say never truly left the land. Visitors to the site often report that the echoes of the past linger, manifesting in unexplained sights, sounds, and sensations that hint at the restless spirits of soldiers who perished in the conflict. The open fields and rolling hills where the battle unfolded are often shrouded in mist, especially in the early mornings and late evenings. Many witnesses describe seeing shadowy figures moving through the fog, appearing as soldiers in period uniforms. Some are seen marching in formation, rifles slung over their shoulders, only to vanish when approached. Others report glimpsing wounded men lying in the grass, their forms fading as they rise or as the viewer draws near. These apparitions seem concentrated around areas of heavy fighting, suggesting that the violence of the past has imprinted itself onto the land. Unexplained sounds are among the most commonly reported phenomena at Fredericksburg. Visitors frequently hear the distant crack of musket fire, the boom of cannon blasts, and the shouts of officers giving commands. Some describe faint cries and moans of the wounded carried on the wind, as though the battlefield itself is replaying the suffering endured by thousands of soldiers on that fateful December day. Several structures within and near the battlefield are also believed to harbor spirits. Historic homes used as field hospitals, such as the Maury House, have been the site of numerous paranormal accounts. Visitors report hearing anguished cries, footsteps echoing in empty corridors, and the faint rattle of medical equipment long since removed. Some claim to see shadowy figures moving through the rooms, disappearing when anyone tries to approach. The atmosphere in these buildings is described as heavy and oppressive, with many feeling a palpable sense of sorrow that lingers long after leaving. Wooded sections of the battlefield are particularly known for eerie encounters. Walkers report the sensation of being watched, with invisible eyes tracking their every move. Shadows flit between trees, sometimes forming the shape of a soldier pausing to rest or survey the field. Sudden drops in temperature, or inexplicable cold spots, are frequently experienced in these areas, adding to the unsettling feeling that something unseen is present. Some visitors even feel a light touch on their shoulder or back when no one is near, as though the spirits of the fallen are reaching out in silent communication. Photographers and paranormal investigators have captured strange anomalies on the battlefield. Orbs of light sometimes appear in photographs, often hovering above known sites of intense fighting or near historic structures. Blurred, human-like figures occasionally appear, with no logical explanation. Audio recordings taken during nighttime visits have picked up low murmurs, footsteps, and even the faint orders of commanding officers, though no one else was present to produce the sounds. These repeated experiences reinforce the idea that Fredericksburg Battlefield is more than a historical site. It is a place where the past still actively intrudes upon the present. Witnesses often describe a deep, emotional impact when visiting the battlefield. The combination of historical knowledge and the subtle, yet persistent paranormal phenomena can create an overwhelming sense of connection to the soldiers who fought and died here. Many report feeling sadness or despair, sensing the weight of lives lost in such violent circumstances. Others describe a strange, almost magnetic pull toward certain areas of the battlefield, where apparitions and sounds seem more pronounced. Local legends have emerged around Fredericksburg Battlefield over the years. Stories tell of a phantom drummer eternally marching through the mist, or of soldiers appearing to help fallen comrades only to fade away moments later. Some accounts speak of officers seen inspecting lines of troops that exist only in shadow, or of spectral figures standing vigil over particular stretches of the field. Even those skeptical of the supernatural often admit to feeling a presence, an unseen awareness that cannot be explained by history alone. The battlefield's legacy is not confined to its open fields. The Rappahannock River, near which some of the fighting occurred, has its own haunting tales. Visitors have reported seeing ghostly silhouettes along the riverbanks, hearing splashes that occur when no one is near, and feeling sudden chills as the wind sweeps across the water. These phenomena suggest that the restless spirits of the fallen extend beyond the battlefield itself, lingering wherever death and tragedy touched the land. Fredericksburg Battlefield is a stark reminder of the human cost of war. But it is also a place where history and the supernatural intertwine. The combination of tragic events, eyewitness accounts, and unexplained phenomena creates an atmosphere that is both somber and chilling. Walking the battlefield, one cannot help but feel that the past is never truly gone. The shadows of soldiers, the distant sounds of battle, and the sudden inexplicable chills serve as an enduring testament to the lives lost and the spirits who remain. For those who visit, Fredericksburg Battlefield offers more than historical insights. It offers a chilling, immersive experience. The echoes of musket fire, the shadowy figures of soldiers, and the cries of the wounded remind all who tread its grounds that the past is never truly buried. The restless spirits continue to roam the hills and fields, ensuring that anyone who walks among them may feel the weight of history and the lingering presence of those who fought and fell. Fredericksburg Battlefield stands as a haunting, living memorial, where time seems to fold upon itself and the voices of the fallen remain audible for those willing or unwitting enough to listen. Spotsylvania Courthouse Battlefield in Virginia stands as one of the most harrowing sites of the American Civil War. Fought in May 1864, the battle was marked by brutal hand-to-hand combat, relentless artillery fire, and staggering casualties. Today, the fields and woods of Spotsylvania carry more than historical weight. They are said to be haunted by the countless soldiers who fell there, leaving an imprint of suffering and unrest that many believe endures to this day. Visitors to the battlefield frequently describe an unsettling atmosphere that is difficult to explain. On quiet mornings, when the mist clings to the trees and the sun barely breaks through, some have reported seeing shadowy figures moving across the open fields. These apparitions often resemble soldiers dressed in the gray and blue uniforms of the Confederate and Union armies. Witnesses claim that these figures march or stagger through the grass, sometimes freezing mid-step, as if trapped between the past and present. When approached, they vanish into thin air, leaving only the echo of footsteps and the lingering sense of a presence that refuses to leave. The battlefield is particularly known for auditory phenomena. Visitors have heard phantom gunfire, the crack of rifles, and the thunderous boom of unseen cannons. These sounds often occur in areas where no modern activity is present, leading many to believe they are remnants of the battle replaying themselves. Faint shouts, the cries of the wounded, and the orders of commanding officers have been reported by those walking the woods at dawn or dusk. Some accounts suggest that the intensity of these sounds can increase in correlation with the density of fog, as if the spirits are more visible or audible when the battlefield itself is shrouded in mist. The terrain of Spotsylvania, with its rolling hills, dense woods, and open fields, seems particularly conducive to paranormal activity. In the dense forested areas, visitors report a constant feeling of being watched, often accompanied by sudden drops in temperature. Many describe glimpsing figures disappearing between trees or hearing the rustle of clothing and the faint clink of metal, as if soldiers are moving silently just beyond sight. Some claim to feel a light touch on their shoulders or hear whispers calling their names. Despite being alone in these isolated parts of the battlefield, historical structures near the battlefield also play a role in the haunting narrative. The Spotsylvania courthouse itself, along with nearby field hospitals and farmhouses used during the conflict, are often cited as epicenters of paranormal activity. Guests have reported shadowy figures pacing hallways, disembodied footsteps on creaking floors, and sudden cold spots in rooms where battles were coordinated or wounded soldiers were treated. Some witnesses speak of seeing apparitions of soldiers tending to the injured or faintly illuminated figures standing vigil over the sites of mass casualties. The energy within these buildings is described as heavy, oppressive, and sorrowful, as if the past refuses to release its grip. Eyewitnesses also recount seeing spectral cavalry, their horses' hooves making no sound as they pass through the fields. These ghostly riders are often seen in the early hours or late in the evening, their presence fleeting yet undeniable. Photographers and paranormal investigators have captured anomalies, including orbs of light hovering above battle sites, misty shapes resembling human forms, and inexplicable movements in digital recordings. Audio recordings sometimes reveal muffled voices, distant screams, or commands being shouted, though no one is physically present. These experiences contribute to the growing reputation of Spotsylvania as a site where the horrors of history continue to manifest. Some visitors describe the emotional impact as almost unbearable. Walking among the trenches, rifle pits, and open fields where thousands once fell, people feel an intense connection to the soldiers' suffering. A profound sense of sadness and helplessness accompanies the chilling sights and sounds, leaving many shaken long after leaving the battlefield. The combination of historical awareness and paranormal experience often creates an overwhelming sense that the land itself remembers the brutality of the conflict. Local legends surrounding Spotsylvania Courthouse battlefield have developed over time. Stories speak of a phantom drummer, eternally beating the rhythm of marching troops, and of spectral officers inspecting formations that no longer exist. Others tell of ghostly soldiers offering a silent salute to those who tread respectfully upon the grounds, only to vanish as quickly as they appeared. There are tales of soldiers who seem to relive the battle endlessly, moving through the same maneuvers, their expressions frozen in agony. Even skeptics have reported an uncanny feeling of unease when visiting, as if the air carries a residual memory of death and struggle. The battlefields, woods, open fields, and historical structures combine to create an atmosphere thick with tension and mystery. Visitors often report that their modern footsteps are accompanied by inexplicable sounds, soft murmurs, the clink of metal, or the faint shuffle of boots on grass. Shadows may dart across vision's edge, sometimes taking the shape of human figures, only to vanish when directly observed. Cold spots, sudden gusts of wind, and other environmental anomalies further reinforce the idea that the battlefield is haunted by the souls of those who perished in combat. Spotsylvania Courthouse Battlefield is not just a historical landmark. It is a place where the past continues to intrude on the present. The suffering, courage, and tragedy of thousands of soldiers seem to linger, manifesting in both visual and auditory phenomena that defy explanation. Whether it is the fleeting figure of a soldier in the mist, the echo of musket fire, or the cold chill that creeps along the spine, the battlefield offers a chilling reminder that some histories are never truly buried. For those who visit, the experience is both humbling and unnerving. The combination of history, tragedy, and paranormal encounters ensures that anyone who walks these grounds may feel the weight of the past pressing around them. The ghosts of Spotsylvania Courthouse remain forever tied to the fields where countless lives were lost, serving as a haunting testament to the human cost of war and the enduring presence of spirits who cannot rest. Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia is one of the most historically significant places in the United States. It was here, on April 9, 1865, that Confederate General Robert E. Lee surrendered to Union General Ulysses S. Grant, effectively bringing the American Civil War to an end. The quiet village, with its restored buildings and preserved landscapes, draws countless visitors each year who come to pay respects, learn history, and walk the same grounds where soldiers once marched. Yet, while the area stands as a monument to peace and reconciliation, it is also said to hold echoes of the past that refuse to be silenced. For many, Appomattox Courthouse is more than just a museum of history. It is a place where restless spirits linger, replaying the final chapter of a bloody and tragic conflict. The surrender at Appomattox marked the end of 4 years of brutal fighting that cost over 600,000 American lives. Soldiers on both sides endured unimaginable hardship, and many never made it home. Some of those who fought and died are believed to remain tied to the land, their presence sensed by those who visit. Visitors often report feelings of heaviness in the air, as if sorrow still clings to the very soil. The old village streets, framed by split-rail fences and historic homes, carry a stillness that can seem unsettling, especially after sundown. One of the most commonly reported phenomena at Appomattox Courthouse is the appearance of ghostly soldiers. Witnesses have described seeing men in faded gray or blue uniforms wandering near the McLean house, where the formal surrender took place. These apparitions are often seen in groups, as if they are marching silently across the fields, their faces solemn and their forms flickering in and out of view. Some say the soldiers vanish as soon as they are approached, leaving behind only a chill in the air and the faint impression of footsteps fading into silence. The sounds of battle are also said to echo through the grounds. Despite the fact that Appomattox was not the site of a major battle, its significance lies more in its symbolism than in combat. Many visitors have reported hearing the unmistakable sounds of war. Gunfire, cannon blasts, and shouted commands have been described by park rangers and tourists alike. On quiet evenings, some have claimed to hear the distant cries of men in pain, as if the voices of the wounded and dying still call out across time. Paranormal investigators believe that the intensity of emotion surrounding the surrender imprinted itself on the land, causing these ghostly sounds to replay again and again. The McLean house itself is a focal point for many strange experiences. It was inside this modest brick home that Generals Lee and Grant sat together, deciding the terms that would reunite the fractured nation. Today, the house is carefully preserved, filled with period furnishings that recreate the atmosphere of that fateful day. Yet visitors walking through its rooms often feel they are not alone. Cold spots are reported, even in the height of summer, and some guests describe hearing the soft murmur of voices when the house is empty. A few have even seen the figure of a man believed to resemble Robert E. Lee, quietly pacing as though still burdened by the weight of surrender. Others claim to have glimpsed a Union officer near the doorway, standing guard as if ensuring the moment of history remains unbroken. The surrounding fields and woodlands also hold their share of ghostly legends. Some visitors on guided tours have spotted shadowy figures lingering along the tree line, only to vanish when approached. Horseback riders on nearby trails have reported hearing the clatter of unseen hooves, keeping pace beside them. One chilling account tells of a visitor who saw a group of mounted cavalrymen materialize in the fog before fading like smoke. These recurring images suggest that not all soldiers left Appomattox behind, even after death. Even those who do not see or hear anything unusual often report an overwhelming sense of sorrow when visiting the site. The weight of history is undeniable here, but many believe it is more than just the power of imagination. The land itself feels saturated with grief, as though the suffering of so many men remains forever etched into its soil. Sensitive visitors describe feelings of being watched or even followed while walking alone. Some leave abruptly, unable to bear the intensity of the atmosphere. Historians often remind visitors that Appomattox Courthouse was not just the end of war, it was also the beginning of healing. General Grant's terms of surrender were generous, allowing Confederate soldiers to return home with dignity and ensuring that the nation could start to mend. Yet that spirit of reconciliation does not erase the anguish of those final days. Ghostly tales from Appomattox suggest that for some, the war never truly ended. Park rangers, while cautious about discussing the paranormal, acknowledge that they have heard countless unexplained stories from guests. Late-night patrols have occasionally revealed strange lights flickering across the fields, with no source to explain them. Others working at the site claim they have heard footsteps inside empty buildings, doors opening and closing on their own, and whispers that seem to come from nowhere. Whether these are spirits of soldiers or simply the land itself remembering remains a matter of belief. For those who visit, Appomattox Courthouse is a powerful reminder of both history and mystery. It is a place where America's darkest chapter reached its conclusion, and where the echoes of that time still linger. The ghosts of Appomattox, whether real or imagined, continue to draw the curious and the brave, adding another layer to the already profound significance of the site. Walking the quiet streets and fields today, one can almost hear the distant roll of drums, the shuffle of boots, and the heavy silence of men laying down arms. In that silence lies the memory of sacrifice, sorrow, and the unshakable presence of the past. Antietam National Battlefield in Sharpsburg, Maryland, is one of the most hallowed grounds in American history. On September 17, 1862, Union and Confederate forces clashed here in what became the bloodiest single day of battle during the American Civil War. By the time the guns fell silent, more than 22,000 men were killed, wounded, or missing. The staggering loss of life marked a turning point in the war, giving President Abraham Lincoln the momentum he needed to issue the preliminary Emancipation Proclamation. Today, Antietam stands as a place of remembrance, but also as a site where many believe the echoes of that terrible day have never faded. Visitors often speak of strange encounters, ghostly apparitions, and haunting sounds that seem to rise from the past, reminding all who walk the fields that the spirits of those who fell may still linger. One of the most infamous areas of the battlefield is known as Bloody Lane. This sunken farm road became the site of horrific carnage when thousands of Confederate soldiers used it as a defensive position. For hours, Union troops assaulted the lane, and the fighting was so intense that the road was said to be filled with bodies, 3 deep. Today, Bloody Lane is quiet and peaceful, bordered by rolling fields, but those who visit often report eerie experiences. Many have heard the sound of gunfire and battle cries echoing in the distance, even when no reenactments are taking place. Some have claimed to hear faint chanting or singing, as if voices of soldiers still rise together in unison. Apparitions of men in ragged uniforms have been spotted standing silently in the lane, only to vanish when approached. Another notorious spot is Burnside's Bridge, a narrow stone bridge that became the focus of repeated Union assaults. Confederate sharpshooters, positioned on the high ground, poured deadly fire onto Union troops attempting to cross. The creek ran red with blood as soldiers fell by the hundreds in their attempts to seize the crossing. Today, the bridge is a picturesque landmark, often visited by tourists who stroll its length. Yet many report feelings of dread or sadness while standing there. Witnesses have claimed to see ghostly figures of soldiers kneeling along the banks, as if still firing their rifles. Others hear the splashing of water and cries of the wounded, as if the river itself remembers the thousands of lives lost upon its banks. The fields and woods around Antietam hold countless stories of unexplained phenomena. Visitors have described hearing the distant rumble of cannons or the rhythmic tramp of marching feet across open ground. At times, the sounds come so vividly that guests have mistaken them for reenactments, only to discover no events were scheduled that day. On foggy mornings, shadowy figures are often reported wandering through the mist, resembling soldiers in tattered uniforms. These phantoms never interact with the living, instead appearing to be trapped in endless repetition of the past. Some paranormal researchers suggest that the sheer violence and trauma of Antietam imprinted itself on the land, creating residual hauntings that play like a recording for those sensitive enough to perceive them. The Pry House, which served as Union General George B. McClellan's headquarters during the battle, is also known for ghostly activity. The house was transformed into a field hospital, and its walls witnessed unspeakable suffering. Surgeons operated without rest, amputating limbs in a desperate attempt to save lives. Many men died here, and their presence is still felt by visitors today. Guests touring the house have reported cold drafts, even on warm days, and the sound of footsteps pacing the upper floors when no one is there. Some claim to see fleeting images of men in officers' uniforms staring from the windows. The atmosphere in the rooms once used for surgeries is especially heavy, with some visitors feeling physically ill or overwhelmed by grief while standing there. Another haunted site is the Dunker Church, a small white building that became a focal point of the battle. Surrounded by chaos, this humble church stood in the center of one of the deadliest firefights of the day. Thousands of men fell around it, and the building itself was riddled with bullets. Today, the restored church is peaceful, yet many say it still carries a powerful energy. Visitors often describe an unnatural silence inside the church, so deep it feels suffocating. Some have reported hearing whispered prayers or hymns, as though voices from another time still linger in the sacred space. On moonlit nights, shadowy figures have been seen moving near the churchyard, silently watching those who pass by. Stories from Antietam are not limited to apparitions and sounds. Some visitors describe being physically touched by unseen hands, as if soldiers are reaching out to them. Others report sudden, overwhelming emotions, sorrow, despair, or fear washing over them without warning. Paranormal investigators have captured unexplained voices on audio recordings, often in response to questions asked during their sessions. Words like help, water, and home have been heard, lending weight to the idea that the battlefield's dead are still calling out for comfort. The hauntings of Antietam seem to serve as more than mere ghost stories. They are reminders of the human cost of war and the lingering pain left behind. For many visitors, these experiences bring history to life in a way books and monuments cannot. Standing on the fields where thousands fell, hearing the cries of men who never left, one cannot help but feel a deep respect for the sacrifices made. The spirits said to haunt Antietam are not malicious. Rather, they are echoes of a tragedy so great it continues to ripple through time. Today, Antietam National Battlefield is preserved not only as a historical site but also as a memorial to those who gave their lives. The rolling hills, stone bridges, and quiet lanes invite reflection. Yet beneath the calm lies the memory of unimaginable bloodshed. Whether or not one believes in ghosts, the stories that circulate here serve as a poignant reminder that the past is never far away. For those who visit, Antietam offers a powerful combination of history and mystery. a place where the veil between present and past seems especially thin. Walking the grounds, it is easy to imagine the clash of armies, the cries of the wounded, and the heavy silence that followed. And perhaps, in that silence, the restless spirits of Antietam continued their eternal vigil, ensuring that the world never forgets the cost of that single, terrible day. Chancellorsville Satterfield in Spotsylvania, Virginia, is a place steeped in both history and mystery. The rolling fields and dense forests here were once the stage for one of the most dramatic and tragic battles of the American Civil War. Between April 30th and May 6, 1863, Union and Confederate forces clashed in a struggle that would cost more than 30,000 lives. General Robert E. Lee achieved one of his greatest victories against a much larger Union army. But it was also here that Confederate General Thomas Stonewall Jackson was mortally wounded by friendly fire. His loss would forever alter the course of the war, leaving Chancellorsville marked not only by bloodshed, but also by sorrow. Today, the battlefield is preserved as a National Historic Site, yet visitors often claim that the echoes of the past have never fully faded. Strange sights, ghostly figures, and eerie sounds are said to haunt this land where history and tragedy remain intertwined. The story of Chancellorsville is one of both brilliance and devastation. Lee divided his outnumbered army in the face of Union General Joseph Hooker's superior force, a daring tactic that led to a stunning Confederate victory. Yet amidst the chaos of battle, one of the Confederacy's most trusted commanders met his end. On the night of May 2, 1863, Stonewall Jackson and his staff rode out to scout the Union lines. In the confusion and darkness, Confederate soldiers mistook them for Union cavalry and opened fire. Jackson was struck by 3 bullets, one shattering his left arm. Despite immediate medical care, complications led to pneumonia, and he died 8 days later. His death devastated Southern morale, and many believe his spirit still lingers on the battlefield. Reports of paranormal activity at Chancellorsville often center around the site where Jackson was shot. The woods, once thick and disorienting, have long carried a reputation for strange occurrences. Visitors walking near the area late in the evening have reported hearing phantom gunfire and the distant shouts of soldiers. Some have claimed to see a lone rider moving silently through the trees, only for the figure to vanish into the mist. Many believe this spectral horseman is none other than Stonewall Jackson himself, doomed to ride the grounds where his fate was sealed. Rangers and tourists alike have described uneasy feelings in this part of the battlefield, as though unseen eyes are watching from the tree line. Another location known for ghostly tales is the Chancellor House site. The grand home of the Chancellor family once stood as the centerpiece of the community, but was destroyed during the battle by artillery fire. Today, only remnants remain, yet many visitors feel a heavy presence when they walk the grounds. Witnesses have reported seeing ghostly soldiers wandering the area, their faces pale and their uniforms tattered. Some describe the smell of smoke lingering in the air, as if the house still burns in some spectral replay of history. Others have reported hearing cries of anguish or the muffled sound of horses, even when the area is deserted. The dense thickets and tangled brush of the wilderness surrounding Chancellorsville contribute to its haunted reputation. During the battle, the thick woods made movement nearly impossible and amplified the chaos of combat. Fires broke out, consuming the wounded who could not escape. To this day, many visitors speak of hearing screams in the forest, cries that fade into silence when investigated. Ghostly figures have been seen moving among the trees, often described as shadows darting from one place to another. Some report feeling a sudden chill, even on hot summer days, while others describe the unsettling sensation of being followed. Paranormal investigators suggest that the suffering of those who perished in the fires left a permanent imprint on the land. Unexplained noises are among the most common reports at Chancellorsville. Tourists have heard the steady rhythm of marching boots across open fields where no one is visible. At times, the sounds of drums and bugles echo faintly, though no reenactments are taking place. Gunshots and cannon fire are also frequently described, often startling those who expect the quiet of a preserved battlefield. Audio recordings taken during investigations have captured voices whispering or calling out. Some words are intelligible, with cries for help or water being most often reported. These ghostly pleas remind visitors of the desperation of soldiers who fell and were left to die where they lay. Even those who do not see or hear anything unusual often report a profound emotional weight while visiting the battlefield. The atmosphere at Chancellorsville can feel heavy, as though the air itself carries the sorrow of the thousands who suffered there. Sensitive individuals describe sudden waves of grief, fear, or disorientation, often strongest near the sites of intense fighting. These sensations lead many to believe that the battlefield is not just haunted by spirits, but also by the lingering energy of the trauma that occurred. There are also stories of specific apparitions that appear to reenact moments of history. One recurring tale involves groups of soldiers seen moving in formation across the fields before vanishing into the ground itself. Another involves a lone Confederate soldier who appears near the edge of the woods, his uniform bloodied, his expression one of confusion. He is often seen clutching his chest as if wounded, and he disappears as suddenly as he arrives. Such sightings suggest that certain moments of the battle may be replaying themselves over and over, trapped in the fabric of the land. Chancellorsville Battlefield remains a place where history and the supernatural intersect. It is a site that embodies both the brilliance of military strategy and the horror of war eschaos. The stories of hauntings are not merely curiosities. They serve as reminders of the tens of thousands who fought and died there. For many visitors, these experiences make the battlefield more than a historic landmark. They transform it into a living memorial where the past refuses to be forgotten. Walking the fields today, it is easy to imagine the chaos and terror that once consumed this quiet landscape. The sounds of cannon fire, the cries of the wounded, and the sight of ghostly figures wandering the woods all speak to the enduring presence of history. Whether one believes in the paranormal or not, the atmosphere of Chancellorsville makes it clear that something remains. The spirits of the soldiers, and perhaps even of Stonewall Jackson himself, seem bound to this place where fate, tragedy, and victory converged. For those who visit, Chancellorsville is a reminder that some battles never truly end, and some echoes of history will always linger in the silence of the land. Wilderness Satterfield in Spotsylvania, Virginia, is one of the most hauntingly significant sites of the American Civil War. It was here, on May 5th and 6th of 1864, that Union General Ulysses S. Grant and Confederate General Robert E. Lee met in one of the most brutal and chaotic clashes of the war. The dense, tangled forest created an unforgiving arena where visibility was limited, movement was stifled, and fires swept through the underbrush, consuming the wounded who could not escape. In just 2 days of savage fighting, over 29,000 men were killed, wounded, or went missing. This terrible toll left an indelible mark on the landscape, and to this day, many believe the spirits of those who perished remain bound to the battlefield. Visitors often report chilling encounters, apparitions in the woods, phantom gunfire echoing through the trees, and cries of the dying carried on the wind. The wilderness is remembered not only for its history, but also for its lingering ghostly presence. The setting of the wilderness itself lends to its eerie reputation. The thick undergrowth and second-growth forest, dense with scrub and tangled vines, was a nightmare for soldiers during the battle. Lines of men became disoriented and separated. Units stumbled into one another, friend and foe alike, often fighting at such close range that musket barrels nearly touched. Smoke from gunfire quickly filled the woods, mingling with the acrid smell of burning brush as fires spread. Wounded soldiers, trapped by flames and unable to move, cried out in agony as the inferno consumed them. Even today, when one walks the trails of wilderness battlefield, the oppressive atmosphere of those chaotic days seems to linger, as if the land itself remembers the horror it once witnessed. Visitors frequently report seeing ghostly figures wandering through the trees. These apparitions are often described as men in ragged uniforms, their faces pale and their movements slow, as though lost or searching for something. Some vanish before the eyes of startled witnesses, while others simply fade into the thick woods. A recurring story tells of entire lines of soldiers appearing on the edge of the forest, moving silently in formation, only to dissolve into mist on foggy mornings and dusky evenings. The shifting shadows of the wilderness make it easy to imagine soldiers still patrolling the woods. Many who have seen these apparitions are convinced that they are the restless spirits of the men who died so suddenly and violently here. The sounds of battle are also said to echo through the wilderness. Tourists and park rangers alike have described hearing distant volleys of musket fire, the thunder of cannon, and the shouts of officers giving commands. Others have reported the mournful cries of wounded men pleading for water or calling for their mothers. These ghostly sounds are often most vivid at dawn or dusk, when the forest is quiet and still. Paranormal investigators who have brought recording equipment to the battlefield have captured unexplained voices and sounds, including faint screams and whispered words. For those who hear them, the experiences feel like windows into the past, as if the terrible battle is still being fought in some echo of time. The most chilling tales from the wilderness involve the phantom fires. Many soldiers who survived the battle recounted the horror of watching their wounded comrades consumed by flames. Today, visitors sometimes claim to smell smoke on the air when no fire is present, or to see flickers of light moving through the trees like the glow of distant flames. Some even report feeling sudden bursts of heat in the cool forest air, accompanied by faint cries of pain. These spectral reminders of the fires that once ravaged the battlefield suggest that the trauma of those second moments remains imprinted on the land. Among the most haunted areas of the battlefield is Saunders Field, where fierce fighting raged on the first day of battle. Union and Confederate forces clashed across the open clearing, filling it with bodies as wave after wave of men charged into withering fire. Today, Saunders Field appears as a peaceful meadow, but visitors describe an unsettling atmosphere. Some claim to see ghostly figures rising from the ground at twilight, as if replaying the moment of their death. Others report hearing the clash of bayonets or the pounding of footsteps rushing across the field. Another hotspot of paranormal activity is the Orange Turnpike, a road that ran through the heart of the battlefield. Soldiers marched along it in life and in death. Many are said to remain. Travelers at night have described seeing shadowy figures walking along the roadside, only to disappear when headlights approach. Some have even claimed that spectral soldiers step into the road, causing drivers to slam on their brakes, only for the figures to vanish into the darkness. These unsettling encounters suggest that for many who fought here, the march has never ended. The emotional impact of the wilderness is undeniable, even for those who do not encounter anything supernatural. Visitors often speak of a heavy sadness that settles over them as they walk the trails. The silence of the woods feels unnatural, as if something unseen lingers just beyond sight. Some experience sudden chills, while others feel watched or even followed. The weight of history is palpable, and for many, the atmosphere alone is enough to convince them that the spirits of the fallen are still present. Stories of the wilderness remind us of the sheer brutality of the Civil War and the human cost of that conflict. The hauntings here do not seem malicious, but rather sorrowful, as though the spirits are trapped in the moments of their suffering. The apparitions, the cries, the phantom fires all serve as echoes of the past, reminders of lives cut short in a violent and chaotic struggle. For some, the battlefield is a place of education and remembrance. For others, it is a place where the veil between past and present grows thin, allowing the dead to walk alongside the living. Wilderness Battlefield stands today as both a memorial and a mystery. The preserved fields and woods honor the sacrifice of those who fought, while the stories of hauntings keep their memory alive in a different way. Walking the trails, one cannot help but imagine the smoke, the fire, and the desperate cries that once filled the forest. Whether or not one believes in ghosts, it is clear that something lingers in the wilderness, a presence born of tragedy, courage, and unimaginable loss. The spirits of the fallen seem to remain, wandering the woods where they fought and died, ensuring that the story of the wilderness will never be forgotten. Petersburg National Battlefield in Virginia is one of the most hauntingly significant sites of the American Civil War. From June 1864 to April 1865, Union and Confederate forces were locked in a grueling siege that lasted 9 long months. Unlike the single, bloody days of battles such as Antietam or Gettysburg, Petersburg was a drawn-out struggle of attrition. Soldiers on both sides endured trench warfare, constant bombardments, disease, hunger, and unimaginable suffering. By the time it ended, tens of thousands were dead, and the Confederate capital of Richmond was left vulnerable, leading directly to General Robert E. Lee's surrender at Appomattox. Today, the battlefield is preserved as a solemn memorial to those who fought, but it is also a place where the past is said to linger. Visitors often report ghostly apparitions, phantom sounds of battle, and eerie feelings that suggest the spirits of Petersburg have never truly left. One of the most infamous events of the Petersburg Campaign was the Battle of the Crater. On July 30th, 1864, Union soldiers detonated a massive mine beneath the Confederate lines, creating an enormous crater and killing hundreds instantly. Union troops rushed forward to exploit the breach, but confusion and poor planning turned the attack into a disaster. The Confederates rallied, trapping Union soldiers inside the pit and slaughtering them in horrific numbers. The ground was said to run red with blood, and cries of the dying echoed across the battlefield. Today, the crater is one of the most haunted locations within Petersburg National Battlefield. Visitors often report hearing muffled explosions beneath their feet, the cries of men in agony, and the sound of gunfire where none exists. Apparitions of soldiers have been seen stumbling near the edges of the crater, their uniforms tattered, their faces twisted in pain, before vanishing into thin air. Paranormal investigators who have visited the site describe capturing strange voices on recordings, often pleading for help or whispering unintelligible words as though trapped in the earth itself. The trenches of Petersburg also carry an eerie reputation. During the siege, soldiers on both sides dug extensive networks of trenches, living in squalid conditions while under constant threat of attack. Disease claimed as many lives as bullets or shells, and morale was crushed by the endless monotony and terror of trench warfare. Today, the earthworks remain, preserved as a reminder of the suffering endured. Yet many who walk them claim to feel they are not alone. Tourists describe hearing footsteps behind them, only to find no one there. Others report shadowy figures lurking just out of sight, darting between the remnants of the trenches. Some have even felt a hand brush against them or tug at their clothing, as if a soldier were reaching out from the past. The silence of the preserved trenches feels heavy, broken only by whispers that seem to come from nowhere. Another location tied to ghostly legends is Fort Stedman, the site of a desperate Confederate assault in March 1865. In one of the last major offensives of the war, Confederate troops stormed Union lines, briefly capturing the fort before being driven back with enormous losses. Thousands were killed or captured in the space of a few hours, and the fort became a place of carnage and despair. Today, visitors often describe an unnatural chill at Fort Stedman, even in the height of summer. Strange lights have been reported flickering across the battlefield, resembling lanterns or muzzle flashes. Some claim to hear the clash of steel or the cries of soldiers locked in hand-to-hand combat. A few even report seeing entire companies of ghostly men advancing silently through the mist before fading into the darkness. The Petersburg battlefield also bears stories of civilian suffering, for the town itself was under siege. Residents endured shelling, shortages of food, and constant fear. Some of the historic homes that still stand in Petersburg are said to be haunted by those who perished during the long ordeal. Visitors have described seeing women in period dress staring out of windows, only to vanish when approached. Others have heard the laughter of children echoing through empty rooms, a chilling reminder that the war's toll extended beyond the soldiers who fought it. These hauntings tie the suffering of the battlefield to the lives of those who lived nearby, showing how deeply the siege scarred both military and civilian alike. Nighttime at Petersburg National Battlefield can be especially unsettling. Rangers conducting late patrols have spoken of hearing distant drums, bugle calls, and the steady tramp of marching feet in the darkness. Lights resembling campfires have appeared in the distance, only to vanish without explanation. Some describe sudden drops in temperature, accompanied by the smell of gunpowder or smoke. These sensations seem to draw visitors back into the atmosphere of the siege, as though the past refuses to release its hold on the land. The emotional impact of Petersburg is profound, and many visitors describe feeling overwhelmed by sorrow when standing on the grounds. The weight of loss seems tangible, pressing down on those who walk the trails. Even without supernatural encounters, the preserved landscape holds a haunting power, carrying the memory of months of suffering and death. Yet for those who do encounter the unexplained, Petersburg becomes more than just a historic site. It becomes a place where the veil between the living and the dead feels very thin. Accounts of paranormal activity at Petersburg often share common threads. The apparitions are not aggressive but sorrowful, as though the spirits of the soldiers are still trapped in the moments of their suffering. Phantom cries for water or help echo the desperation of men who died slowly, far from home. The strange lights and sounds of battle suggest that the trauma of war has imprinted itself onto the very soil, replaying itself in endless repetition. For many, these stories serve as reminders of the humanity behind the statistics of war, each ghostly figure representing a life lost too soon. Today, Petersburg National Battlefield stands as both a tribute to sacrifice and a place of mystery. The preserved earthworks, forts, and craters offer a glimpse into the realities of siege warfare. While the ghost stories remind us that the past is never far away, visitors who walk the fields often leave with more than knowledge of history. They carry with them the sense that the spirits of Petersburg are still present, ensuring their suffering is not forgotten. Whether one believes in the paranormal or not, there is no denying that the battlefield holds an atmosphere unlike any other: solemn, eerie silence, broken at times by whispers of the past. In that silence lies the memory of a nation torn apart, and perhaps the lingering presence of those who gave their lives in one of the war's darkest chapters. Ball's Bluff Battlefield in Leesburg, Virginia, is one of the lesser-known but most haunting sites of the American Civil War. On October 21, 1861, just months after the war began, Union and Confederate forces clashed here in what became a disastrous defeat for the Union Army. The battle, fought along the steep bluffs overlooking the Potomac River, ended in chaos as Union soldiers were forced into retreat, many tumbling down the cliffs or drowning in the river below. Nearly 1,000 men were killed, wounded, or captured, and the tragedy sent shockwaves through the North. Today, the battlefield is preserved as a quiet park, but beneath its stillness lies a heavy past. Visitors often report ghostly figures, phantom sounds of battle, and an atmosphere so intense that it feels as if the spirits of the fallen are still lingering, unable to move on from the site of their final moments. The Battle of Ball's Bluff was born from miscommunication and poor intelligence. Union forces, believing they faced only a small Confederate detachment, crossed the Potomac River into Virginia. Instead, they encountered a much stronger enemy force. Outnumbered and trapped against the steep bluffs, Union soldiers struggled to hold their position. As the Confederates advanced, panic spread among the Union ranks. The retreat quickly turned into disaster, with men stumbling down the cliffs or attempting to swim across the Potomac under heavy fire. Many drowned in the swift current, weighed down by their equipment. The bodies of some were carried miles downstream, a grim reminder of the battle's brutality. This combination of sudden death, desperation, and chaos has given the battlefield its haunted reputation, as though the anguish of those final moments was forever imprinted on the land. One of the most frequently reported paranormal phenomena at Ball's Bluff is the appearance of ghostly soldiers. Visitors walking the wooded trails often describe seeing men in faded blue or gray uniforms standing silently among the trees. Some appear confused, staring out toward the river as if searching for escape. Others are seen rushing through the brush, weapons in hand, before vanishing into the shadows. These apparitions are often fleeting, but the detail is enough to convince witnesses that they are encountering the restless spirits of those who died here. Rangers have also heard reports of entire groups of soldiers moving silently across the fields, fading away as soon as they are noticed. The sounds of battle are another chilling element tied to the battlefield. Tourists and locals alike have claimed to hear the thunder of musket fire and the shouts of men locked in combat. On still nights, cries of terror and anguish are said to rise from the riverbank, echoing as though the soldiers are reliving their desperate flight. Some have heard the splash of men hitting the water or the frantic thrashing of drowning soldiers, only to find the river's surface calm and undisturbed. Paranormal investigators who have visited Ball's Bluff have recorded strange audio, capturing voices that cry out for help or whisper words lost to time. These unexplained sounds create the impression that the chaos of the battle continues to replay itself, even more than a century later. The cemetery at Ball's Bluff adds another layer to the haunting atmosphere. The Ball's Bluff National Cemetery is one of the smallest in the country, with just 54 graves. Most of the soldiers buried here are unknown, their identities lost in the confusion of the battle. The cemetery, surrounded by a simple stone wall, feels especially heavy to those who visit. Some report feeling watched as they walk among the graves, while others describe sudden chills or the sensation of invisible hands brushing against them. A few visitors claim to have seen misty figures standing at attention among the headstones, as if the soldiers are still keeping eternal vigil over their fallen comrades. The river itself carries its own ghostly legends. The Potomac, flowing quietly past the bluffs today, once became a watery grave for dozens of Union soldiers. Fishermen and boaters have reported hearing strange splashes, as if something large has fallen into the water, though nothing can be found. Others have seen shadowy forms moving beneath the surface or drifting along the currents, resembling the drowned bodies of soldiers from long ago. On misty mornings, some say the outlines of boats can be seen gliding silently across the river before fading into the fog. These spectral sightings suggest that the trauma of those who drowned in desperation remains tied to the waters of the Potomac. Even those who do not witness anything supernatural often describe an overwhelming sense of sadness at Ball's Bluff. The wooded trails are quiet, yet many visitors say the silence feels unnatural, as if the forest is holding its breath. Sensitive individuals describe sudden waves of grief or fear, particularly near the edge of the bluffs where the retreating soldiers made their final, doomed attempts to escape. The oppressive atmosphere has led many to believe that the spirits of the dead are still present, their pain woven into the very soil and air of the battlefield. Some of the most compelling stories involve encounters with individual apparitions. There are accounts of a lone Union officer appearing on the bluff, gazing out over the river with a look of despair before fading away. Others tell of a Confederate soldier, his uniform tattered and his face streaked with blood, who appears along the trail only to vanish into the woods. These solitary figures seem to embody the confusion, terror, and sacrifice that marked the battle, forever reliving the moments of their deaths. The haunting of Ball's Bluff is not one of aggression or malice, but of sorrow and remembrance. The spirits that linger here seem bound by the suddenness of their deaths, unable to leave the site where they fell. Their apparitions, cries, and phantom movements serve as reminders of the real human cost of war. For visitors, these experiences make Ball's Bluff more than just a historic landmark. It becomes a living memorial, where the line between past and present feels fragile and thin. Walking the trails of Ball's Bluff battlefield today, one is struck by the natural beauty of the wooded bluffs and the gentle flow of the river. Yet beneath this peace lies the memory of a disaster that claimed countless lives. The apparitions, the sounds of battle, and the heavy silence all testify to the enduring presence of history. Whether or not one believes in ghosts, the battlefield leaves an impression on all who visit, a place where the sacrifices of soldiers echo through time. At Ball's Bluff, the past is never far away, and the spirits of those who died so tragically seem destined to remain, reminding the living of the price of war. New Market Battlefield, located in Virginia's Shenandoah Valley, is a site of profound historical significance and eerie reputation, known primarily as the location of a Confederate victory during the Civil War. This battlefield witnessed intense combat, heroism, and tragic loss of life. On May 15, 1864, Union and Confederate forces clashed in what would become one of the most remembered engagements of the Valley campaigns. The Confederate forces, though outnumbered, achieved a victory that came at a heavy cost. The bravery of young cadets from the Virginia Military Institute, who joined the fight despite their youth, remains legendary, yet their sacrifice left a lingering imprint on the land. Today, Newmarket Battlefield stands not only as a memorial to the fallen, but also as a place steeped in paranormal activity. Visitors often report ghostly sightings, unexplained noises, and an atmosphere heavy with the echoes of history. The battlefield is a sprawling area of rolling fields, wooded sections, and historic structures that played critical roles during the engagement. The sounds of musket fire, artillery, and the cries of soldiers once filled the air, and some believe that the energy from that fateful day still lingers. Numerous visitors have reported hearing phantom battle sounds, even when the grounds are silent. The distant crack of musket fire, the rumble of unseen cannons, and the shuffle of marching feet have all been described by those who have walked the historic terrain. Some even claim to hear the commands of officers and the cries of young cadets, as if the battle is being replayed invisibly in fragments. Sightings of ghostly figures are another common phenomenon at Newmarket Battlefield. People have reported seeing men in Confederate gray and Union blue moving across the fields or standing near historic landmarks. These apparitions sometimes appear as full-bodied figures engaged in action, while at other times they manifest as shadows or fleeting images. The young cadets, often described as spectral teenagers in uniform, have been seen marching in formation or tending to the wounded. Many witnesses report a feeling of being watched or followed as they traverse the battlefield, reinforcing the sense that the spirits of those who fought are still present. The historic buildings and homes surrounding the battlefield also contribute to its haunted reputation. Structures that once served as field hospitals, command posts, or supply depots often display unexplained activity. Visitors have reported hearing footsteps on stairs, doors opening and closing on their own, and faint voices in empty rooms. Some claim to have seen the apparitions of soldiers tending to the injured or carrying supplies, appearing and disappearing as if trapped in the final moments of the battle. The energy of suffering, fear, and bravery seems to cling to the walls, providing a tangible connection to the past. Even in the open fields, where the battle raged most fiercely, paranormal experiences are frequently reported. Sudden chills, cold spots, and the sensation of unseen presences are common among visitors. Some have witnessed strange mists rising from the ground, which dissipate as they approach. Others have reported ghostly figures standing silently among the trees or moving across the horizon before vanishing. These phenomena suggest that the spirits of soldiers, particularly those who fell young or alone, may remain tied to the land, unwilling or unable to move on. Newmarket Battlefield's reputation extends to nighttime visits, when the atmosphere becomes particularly charged. Paranormal enthusiasts who explore the grounds after dark often report seeing orbs of light, shadowy figures, and hearing inexplicable sounds that resemble battle cries or whispered commands. The sense of history pressing in is almost tangible, and many describe an overwhelming feeling of awe, mixed with unease. The combination of visual, auditory, and sensory experiences creates a vivid impression that the past continues to play itself out, invisible yet present. The connection between history and hauntings at Newmarket Battlefield is undeniable. Every hill, field, and structure bears the memory of courage, sacrifice, and conflict. Those who walk the grounds are often struck by the weight of the past, sensing that the spirits of soldiers and young cadets remain close. The site serves as both a memorial and a place of eerie fascination, where history is not only remembered but sometimes felt in a profoundly personal way. Today, Newmarket Battlefield continues to draw visitors, historians, and paranormal investigators alike. While it offers an educational glimpse into a pivotal moment in the Civil War, it also provides a haunting experience that reminds visitors of the human cost of war. The apparitions, phantom sounds, and unexplained sensations all serve as a reminder that some spirits never leave, and that the echoes of bravery, tragedy, and youthful sacrifice linger long after the cannons have fallen silent. Cedar Creek Battlefield in Middletown, Virginia, is a place where the rolling fields and quiet hillsides mask the violence and chaos that once unfolded there. On October 19, 1864, the valley became the stage for one of the last major battles of the Civil War in the Shenandoah Valley. The fighting was fierce, brutal, and costly, with thousands of soldiers killed, wounded, or captured. The battle ended in a decisive Union victory under General Philip Sheridan, but not before confusion, terror, and bloodshed swept across the fields. Today, Cedar Creek is remembered as both a turning point in the war and as a site where echoes of the past seem unwilling to fade. Many who visit speak of ghostly apparitions, phantom sounds of battle, and a chilling sense that the spirits of the fallen remain tethered to the land. The battle began before dawn, as Confederate forces under General Jubal Early launched a surprise attack on Union camps. Cloaked in darkness and early morning fog, the Confederates swept across the fields, overwhelming the sleeping Union soldiers. Chaos erupted as tents were abandoned and soldiers scrambled to form lines of defense. For hours, the Confederates pushed the Union Army back, capturing artillery and prisoners in the process. But later that day, General Sheridan, having famously ridden from Winchester to rally his men, turned the tide. With a fierce counterattack, Union forces regained the ground they had lost and drove the Confederates into retreat. By nightfall, the fields were littered with the dead and dying, their cries echoing into the valley. It is in this violent history that many believe the hauntings of Cedar Creek were born. Reports of ghostly figures are among the most common at the battlefield. Visitors walking along the trails that wind through the park have described encountering men in tattered uniforms who vanish into thin air. Some are seen standing silently in the fields, muskets in hand, their expressions weary and pained. Others appear to march across the grass in formation, only to disappear into the mist. A particularly chilling account involves soldiers seen near Belgrove Plantation, which served as Union headquarters during the battle. Witnesses describe seeing gray-clad men moving silently across the property, their faces pale and eyes empty, before fading into the night. The sounds of battle are equally unsettling. Tourists and locals alike have reported hearing the distant thunder of cannon fire rolling across the hills, even on the stillest of days. Sharp cracks of musket fire, shouted orders, and the anguished cries of the wounded are said to echo across the valley, as though the land itself remembers the horrors of that day. On foggy mornings, the sounds are especially vivid, with some claiming they can hear the rhythmic beat of drums or the clatter of hooves, as if cavalry units are still charging across the fields. Paranormal investigators who have visited Cedar Creek have captured unexplained recordings of voices, moans, and even what sounds like volleys of gunfire. When no one else was present, Belgrove Plantation itself is a focal point for ghostly encounters. The stately mansion, with its long history predating the Civil War, became a hospital during and after the battle. The wounded filled its rooms, and the air was heavy with suffering. Many died within its walls, and their spirits are said to linger. Guests and staff have reported hearing footsteps echoing through empty hallways, doors opening and closing by themselves, and disembodied voices calling out in pain or prayer. Some have seen full apparitions, figures dressed in 19th century clothing, moving through the rooms or staring from the windows late at night. The dining room, in particular, is said to carry a cold, uneasy energy, as if the weight of what took place there still clings to the air. Beyond the plantation, the fields themselves carry their own spectral energy. Near the site of the Union retreat in the morning hours, visitors have described an overwhelming sense of dread, as though they are being watched by unseen eyes. Some claim to have felt sudden chills or the brush of an invisible hand on their shoulders. In the woods bordering the battlefield, hunters and hikers have encountered strange mists that take on humanoid shapes before dissolving. Others report the smell of gunpowder or smoke, sharp and sudden, despite the absence of any fire. These experiences often leave visitors shaken, convinced that the spirits of those who fought and fell here are still replaying their final moments. There are also stories tied to General Sheridan's legendary ride. Along the route he took to rally his men, people have reported hearing the pounding of hooves in the dirt, though no horses are in sight. At times, witnesses claim to see a shadowy figure on horseback racing across the fields before vanishing into the horizon. This spectral horseman is often associated with Sheridan himself, as though his determination to turn the tide of battle remains imprinted on the land. The emotional weight of Cedar Creek is something many visitors cannot ignore. The land feels charged, heavy with memory. People walking the fields often describe sudden waves of sorrow or fear, particularly in areas where fighting was most intense. Some say it feels as though the ground itself remembers the blood spilled upon it, and the sorrow of the fallen radiates into those who tread there. Even skeptics admit that the battlefield carries a presence that is difficult to explain, a stillness that feels almost alive. Nighttime at Cedar Creek is especially eerie. Under the moonlight, the fields seem to shift and breathe with the weight of history. Campers in the area have reported being awakened by the sound of drums or distant bugle calls. Others describe hearing faint conversations or weeping carried on the night air. A few have even claimed to see lantern lights bobbing across the fields, as though soldiers still patrol the land. These experiences make the battlefield feel as though the veil between past and present is thin, a place where history lingers in both memory and spirit. Today, Cedar Creek Battlefield stands as both a historic site and a place of haunting. Visitors come to learn about the battle and honor the memory of those who fought. But many leave with experiences they cannot explain. The apparitions, the phantom sounds, the strange sensations all point to the belief that the spirits of soldiers remain bound to the place where they suffered and died. Cedar Creek is not just a site of history. It is a place where the echoes of the past continue to walk, march, and cry out, reminding the living of the terrible cost of war. Fort Harrison, located in Richmond, Virginia, is a historic site that played a critical role during the Civil War, built by Confederate forces as part of the defensive line protecting the city. Fort Harrison was the scene of fierce fighting during the Union assaults in 1864. Its strategic importance made it a key target, and the battle that took place there left a lasting mark on both history and the landscape itself. Today, Fort Harrison stands not only as a preserved historical site, but also as a location widely regarded for paranormal activity. Visitors often report unexplained sounds, ghostly figures, and an eerie atmosphere that seems to carry the weight of the past. During the Battle of Fort Harrison, Union forces launched a determined assault on the Confederate fortifications. The fort changed hands amid intense combat, with heavy casualties on both sides. Soldiers fought bravely, and many lost their lives defending or attempting to capture the position. The fort's earthen walls and trenches were stained with blood, and the cries of the wounded and dying echoed across the battlefield. These intense emotions and the violence of the battle are believed by paranormal investigators to have left a residual energy that continues to manifest today. Visitors to Fort Harrison frequently report hearing phantom sounds that seem to replay the battle. Footsteps, the clash of swords, distant musket fire, and even the roar of cannons have been described as echoing across the grounds, particularly near the earthen fortifications. Some witnesses have claimed to hear the urgent shouts of officers giving commands or the cries of soldiers calling for aid. These auditory phenomena often occur in areas where no reenactments or modern disturbances are present, suggesting that the fort itself holds the echoes of its violent history. Sightings of ghostly figures are another common occurrence at Fort Harrison. Visitors have described seeing soldiers in Confederate gray uniforms patrolling the trenches or standing silently along the walls. Some apparitions appear fully formed, moving as if performing their duties, while others manifest as shadows that vanish when approached. In several reports, Figures have been seen crouching in defensive positions or tending to imaginary wounds, as if replaying the events of that fateful day. These spectral soldiers are sometimes accompanied by the faint sounds of movement, giving the impression that the past is never truly gone. The interior areas of the fort, including underground magazines and storage bunkers, are hotspots for paranormal activity. Sudden drops in temperature, cold drafts, and the sensation of being watched are often reported. Shadowy forms have been seen moving along walls or disappearing around corners. Some visitors report hearing faint whispers or indistinct voices in these areas, while objects appear to move inexplicably. The combination of visual, auditory, and sensory phenomena creates a palpable sense of presence, making the fort feel alive with the memories of its past. Even the surrounding landscape contributes to Fort Harrison's haunted reputation. The trenches, earthworks, and adjacent fields are often described as unnervingly quiet, yet visitors sometimes feel a presence just out of sight. On misty mornings, ghostly figures have been reported moving along the fort's perimeter or among the trees lining the grounds. The combination of natural fog and the fort's historical energy can create the impression of apparitions drifting across the landscape, almost as if time has folded back on itself. Many who visit Fort Harrison describe emotional experiences as well. Feelings of unease, sudden sadness, or even fear are common, particularly near areas where intense fighting or heavy casualties occurred. Some visitors report the sensation of being followed or an inexplicable pressure on their shoulders or chest. These experiences often coincide with historical hotspots, suggesting that the fort's past continues to exert a subtle influence on the present. Fort Harrison remains a site where history and the supernatural intersect. While it is preserved as a testament to the bravery and sacrifice of Confederate and Union soldiers alike, it also offers an eerie glimpse into the lingering presence of those who perished there. Visitors, historians, and paranormal enthusiasts continue to explore its grounds, drawn by the combination of historical significance and unexplained phenomena. The spectral activity, ghostly figures, phantom sounds, and unsettling sensations serves as a reminder that the echoes of war are never truly silenced. Today, Fort Harrison stands as both a historical landmark and a haunted location. Its earthen walls and surrounding fields preserve the memory of courage, sacrifice, and tragedy, while also providing an environment where the supernatural seems tangible. Whether through the glimpse of a ghostly soldier, the distant sound of musket fire, or the sudden drop of temperature in a forgotten corner, Fort Harrison invites visitors to experience the past in a way that is both educational and spine-chilling. The fort's haunted legacy ensures that the history of Richmond's defenses remains alive, long after the last echoes of battle have faded. Fort Monroe, standing at the tip of the Virginia Peninsula in Hampton, is a place where history and haunting intertwine. Known as the Gibraltar of the Chesapeake, this massive stone fortress has stood since the early 19th century, guarding the entrance to the Chesapeake Bay. During the Civil War, it remained in Union hands, serving as a stronghold, prison, and symbol of federal power, deep in Confederate territory. Its walls witnessed triumph and tragedy, holding Confederate President Jefferson Davis as a prisoner and sheltering thousands of enslaved people seeking freedom under Union protection. With such a storied and turbulent past, it is little wonder that Fort Monroe has gained a reputation for paranormal activity. Visitors, staff, and soldiers stationed there have long reported ghostly figures, unexplained noises, and eerie sensations that suggest the spirits of the past still roam its stone corridors and shadowy ramparts. The fort itself is imposing, built of stone with a surrounding moat, and designed to withstand attacks by land and sea. Completed in 1834, it was among the most advanced military fortifications of its time. During the Civil War, its significance became clear. Fort Monroe was never captured by Confederate forces, making it a key base for Union operations in the South. It became both a symbol of strength and a place of sorrow, where battles were planned, lives were lost, and fates were sealed. The weight of this history seems embedded in its very stones, which many believe hold the energy of those who lived and died within its walls. Among the most persistent ghost stories at Fort Monroe are sightings of soldiers. Apparitions dressed in Union blue are said to patrol the ramparts, their figures sometimes seen in the moonlight as they march silently along the walls. Some witnesses describe seeing these ghostly sentinels vanish into the darkness or pass through solid stone. Confederate soldiers, too, are said to appear, often lingering in the casemates or around the parade grounds. Their presence is sometimes accompanied by the faint sounds of boots striking stone, as if they are still pacing in eternal watch. The casemates, the vaulted chambers within the fort are especially notorious for paranormal encounters. These chambers once held heavy guns, storage rooms, and prison cells. During the war, Confederate prisoners were confined here, and Jefferson Davis himself was imprisoned in casemate No. 2. Visitors exploring the museum and casemates often report sudden drops in temperature, as well as an overwhelming sense of unease. Shadows have been seen moving across the walls when no one else is present. Some have even claimed to hear chains rattling or muffled cries echoing through the stone corridors, as if the anguish of the imprisoned lingers in the air. One of the most famous ghostly figures tied to Fort Monroe is that of Jefferson Davis. After being captured in 1865, he was held under heavy guard in the casemates for 2 years. Several witnesses over the years have claimed to see his apparition walking the halls, a tall, spectral figure dressed in period clothing. Others report feeling a stern presence in his former cell, as though the spirit of the Confederate leader has never fully departed the site of his captivity. The Chapel of the Centurion, built within the fort in 1858, is also said to be haunted. This historic church served soldiers and their families for generations, and today it remains active. Yet those who enter sometimes describe feeling an otherworldly presence. Phantom footsteps have been heard in the aisles, and parishioners have reported seeing shadowy figures seated in the pews long after services have ended. On quiet evenings, the sound of organ music has been heard drifting through the chapel, though no one was playing. These reports suggest that even the house of worship within the fort is not free from ghostly visitations. The officers' quarters, many of which still stand, are another source of chilling stories. Families who lived in these stately houses during the fort's active years often spoke of strange happenings, objects moving on their own, lights flickering, or doors opening and closing without explanation. In one home, a spectral woman dressed in white has been seen gliding down the stairs, vanishing before reaching the bottom. Another house is said to be haunted by the ghost of a soldier who took his own life, his restless spirit appearing in mirrors or standing silently in bedrooms. The parade grounds, once a hub of activity where soldiers drilled and formations gathered, are also known for eerie phenomena. Visitors walking across the grassy expanse at night have reported hearing the faint sound of drums or the cadence of marching feet. At times, disembodied voices can be heard calling commands, their words carried on the wind. The atmosphere is particularly heavy here, as though the echoes of countless soldiers still gather for duty, bound to their posts, even in death. Beyond apparitions and sounds, many visitors describe intense feelings while inside the fort. Some speak of sudden waves of sadness or dread, particularly near the casemates or the water's edge, where prisoners once gazed longingly across the bay. Others feel watched as they explore, convinced unseen eyes are following their every move. Sensitive individuals often describe the fort as alive with memory, its walls steeped in a spiritual energy that cannot be ignored. There are also reports of phantom smells drifting through the air, the sharp scent of gunpowder, the acrid odor of smoke, and even the faint metallic tang of blood have been noted by those walking the ramparts or exploring the bastions. These sensory echoes add to the sense that Fort Monroe is not simply a historic monument, but a place where the past continues to assert itself in vivid, unsettling ways. Fort Monroe's location at the mouth of the Chesapeake Bay adds to its haunted mystique. Surrounded by water, the fort seems isolated, a self-contained world where history feels very close. On foggy nights, the moat and walls take on a ghostly glow, and many have claimed to see spectral figures moving along the ramparts or peering from windows. Lantern lights are said to appear in the darkness, bobbing gently as if carried by invisible hands. Today, Fort Monroe is a national monument, open to visitors who wish to explore its rich history. For many, it is a place of education and reflection, a chance to connect with the nation's past. But for others, it is also a place of mystery and unease. The ghostly apparitions, the phantom sounds of battle, and the heavy presence that hangs over the fort all suggest that its story is far from over. Fort Monroe is more than just a fortress of stone and history. It is a fortress of memory, where the spirits of soldiers and prisoners alike remain, their stories forever woven into the fabric of its walls. Fort Magruder, in Williamsburg, Virginia, stands as a testament to both military strategy and the lingering echoes of the past. Built in 1862 to defend the city from Union forces, this Confederate fortification played a pivotal role during the Peninsula Campaign of the Civil War. Its earthen walls, strategic placement, and commanding view of the surrounding terrain made it a formidable obstacle for advancing Union troops. Yet, the history of Fort Magruder is not solely one of strategy and battle. It is also a place steeped in mystery and haunting. Over the years, visitors have reported ghostly apparitions, unexplained sounds, and eerie sensations, all suggesting that the spirits of soldiers and civilians from the Civil War era remain bound to this historic site. The fort itself was designed as a defensive redoubt, part of the larger network known as the Williamsburg Line, which included several other fortifications intended to slow or halt Union advances. Built from earth and timber, it was both sturdy and utilitarian, capable of withstanding artillery bombardment, while providing soldiers with positions from which to fire upon approaching enemies. During the Battle for Williamsburg on May 5, 1862, Fort Magruder's cannons roared as Confederate troops held off superior Union forces long enough to allow the bulk of their army to retreat in an organized fashion. The fighting was intense, chaotic, and deadly. Many soldiers lost their lives on the fort's grounds, and some accounts suggest that bodies remained buried within the earthworks, their stories never fully told. It is this combination of valor, death, and sudden tragedy that has given Fort Magruder its haunted reputation. Visitors today often speak of seeing ghostly figures on the fort's parapets or moving through the surrounding fields. Some describe men in gray uniforms, rifles in hand, standing as though on guard, staring silently across the landscape. Others report the fleeting image of a soldier running along the earthworks before disappearing into the trees. These apparitions are often seen in the early morning fog or during dusk, when shadows lengthen and the forested surroundings create a natural atmosphere of mystery. Witnesses frequently note that these figures appear solid and tangible for a moment, only to vanish when approached, leaving behind an inexplicable chill in the air. Sounds from the past are another hallmark of Fort Magruder's paranormal reputation. Visitors have reported hearing distant musket fire, the rattle of cannon, and the sharp commands of officers shouting orders. Some say they have heard the cries of wounded men or the muffled clash of hand-to-hand combat near the fort's walls. On quiet nights, the echoes seem particularly vivid, carrying across the fields and rising from the surrounding woods. Paranormal investigators have recorded unexplained noises, including whispers, groans, and indistinct voices, often in areas where there is no logical source. These sounds give the impression that the battle is still replaying itself in some spectral form, as if the events of May 5, 1862, are eternally embedded in the fort's soil. Certain areas of Fort Magruder are known to be hotspots for ghostly encounters. The main earthworks, where the heaviest fighting occurred, are said to carry an almost tangible weight of sorrow. Visitors often feel sudden chills or experience the sensation of being watched. Some report feeling a brush of cold air or a tingling sensation along their skin, as if unseen hands are reaching out. In the nearby woods and along the rifle pits, shadowy figures have been seen moving silently, and the sense of presence is often so strong that even skeptical observers find themselves unsettled. One of the more eerie reports comes from the observation of phantom artillery. On foggy mornings, Witnesses have described seeing the outlines of cannons on the parapets, with figures loading and firing them. The experience is accompanied by the smell of gunpowder, sharp and unmistakable, though no live artillery has been fired in decades. Some even claim to hear the metallic clanging of cannonballs striking metal or stone, adding to the feeling that the fort is caught between the past and present, replaying its own history. Fort Magruder is not only haunted by soldiers. Civilian presence also lingers in the stories told by visitors. Williamsburg was a bustling town during the Civil War, and residents often found themselves caught in the crossfire or pressed into service. There are accounts of ghostly women wandering the fields near the fort, sometimes dressed in period clothing, appearing as if searching for loved ones lost in battle. Shadowy figures resembling children have also been reported, darting between trees or standing silently near the parapets. These apparitions create an unsettling sense that the entire community, not just the soldiers, remains present in some spectral form. The fort's interiors and surrounding structures add to its reputation. Some of the barracks and nearby buildings, though partially reconstructed, are said to hold a residual energy from the past. Visitors have reported objects moving on their own, doors opening or closing unexpectedly, and lights flickering without explanation. Others have noted sudden drops in temperature or an inexplicable heaviness in the air when standing in certain locations. These occurrences are often brief but intense, leaving a lasting impression on those who experience them. The emotional atmosphere of Fort Magruder is something many visitors cannot ignore. Walking across the earthworks or through the surrounding fields, one cannot help but feel the weight of history pressing down. The combination of tragic sacrifice, violent conflict, and lingering unrest gives the fort a presence that is almost palpable. Even without seeing a ghost or hearing a sound, the air feels charged with memory and sorrow. Some sensitive individuals report feelings of anxiety, sadness, or fear that seem to have no source other than the fort itself. Fort Magruder today serves as a historical site, preserved for education and remembrance. Visitors come to learn about the Peninsula Campaign, the fort's strategic significance, and the heroism displayed during the battle. Yet for many, the experience goes beyond history. The apparitions, phantom sounds, and heavy atmosphere create a sense of connection to the past that is both fascinating and unsettling. It is a place where the sacrifices of Confederate soldiers, the presence of civilians, and the lingering echoes of battle continue to make themselves felt. Fort Magruder is not just a monument to history, it is a living reminder that some spirits, bound by violence and valor, may never truly leave the places they once called the front lines. Fort Gregg, located on the outskirts of Petersburg, Virginia, is a silent sentinel of one of the final and most desperate chapters of the American Civil War. Built as part of the Confederate defenses during the Siege of Petersburg, the fort was a critical stronghold designed to halt the advancing Union forces. In April 1865, during the Battle of Fort Gregg, Confederate troops fought fiercely to defend this fortification, knowing that the fall of Petersburg would leave Richmond exposed and the Confederacy on the brink of collapse. The battle was marked by intense close-quarters combat, cannon fire, and heavy casualties on both sides. Today, Fort Gregg stands as a preserved historic site, but its reputation goes beyond history lessons. Visitors have long reported ghostly figures, phantom sounds of battle, and a chilling atmosphere that suggests the spirits of the soldiers who fought and died here have never truly left. The battle for Fort Gregg was part of the larger Confederate effort to protect Petersburg's defenses in the closing days of the war. On April 2, 1865, Union forces launched a coordinated assault on the Confederate lines. Fort Gregg, manned by a small contingent of determined soldiers, became a focal point of resistance. Outnumbered and facing relentless artillery bombardment, the defenders fought with everything they had. Hand-to-hand combat erupted within the fort as Union soldiers stormed the earthworks. Despite their courage, the fort ultimately fell, marking one of the last stands of Confederate forces before Richmond was evacuated. The ground still bears the memory of this desperate struggle, and many believe the spirits of the fallen soldiers remain bound to the site, eternally reliving the horror of those final moments. One of the most frequently reported paranormal phenomena at Fort Gregg is the appearance of ghostly soldiers. Visitors often describe seeing figures dressed in Confederate gray standing silently along the fort's earthworks or moving through the surrounding fields. Some witnesses have reported seeing soldiers firing rifles or crouching behind parapets, as if still engaged in battle, only to vanish moments later. Others describe fleeting glimpses of Union troops advancing through the fog, their blue uniforms appearing and disappearing like shadows. These apparitions are often reported at dawn or dusk, times when the light casts long shadows and the atmosphere of the battlefield feels especially charged. The sounds of battle are another hallmark of Fort Gregg's haunted reputation. Visitors have reported hearing the distant boom of cannons, the sharp crack of musket fire, and the anguished cries of soldiers. On quiet mornings, these sounds are often described as startlingly realistic, echoing across the fields and trenches as though the conflict is replaying itself. Some have even heard shouted orders and the rumble of soldiers' boots against the earthworks. Paranormal investigators have captured unexplained audio recordings on the site, including voices calling out commands or cries of pain when no one else is present. These auditory experiences contribute to the eerie feeling that the past remains present at Fort Gregg. The fort's earthworks and trenches are often described as hotspots for paranormal activity. Visitors walking the preserved lines sometimes feel sudden chills or a sense of being watched. Shadowy figures have been seen moving along the parapets or disappearing into the surrounding trees. In certain areas, people report feeling a heavy pressure or overwhelming sadness, as though the collective anguish of the soldiers who fought and died here is still imprinted on the land. Some sensitive individuals describe hearing whispers in the wind or catching fleeting glimpses of movement out of the corner of their eyes, adding to the sense that the fort is alive with the memories of the past. Fort Gregg is also associated with ghostly sensations beyond visual and auditory phenomena. Many visitors have reported feeling inexplicable cold spots, even on warm days, or experiencing sudden bouts of anxiety or fear that seem to have no source. The air often feels thick and oppressive near the fort, particularly around the locations where the fiercest fighting occurred. Some have claimed to feel as though invisible hands are brushing against them, or that unseen presences are walking nearby. These sensations leave an impression that Fort Gregg is not merely a historical site, but a place where the past exerts a tangible influence on the present. The surrounding battlefield also carries lingering traces of the conflict. Fields where soldiers once marched and fought are reported to be imbued with residual energy. Witnesses have claimed to see mists rising from the ground, taking on human forms before dissipating. Others have reported phantom lights moving along the earthworks, resembling lanterns or signals used during the battle. Even the trees and terrain seem charged with memory, creating an atmosphere that is both solemn and unsettling. Many accounts describe emotional encounters with the spirits at Fort Gregg. Some visitors have seen individual soldiers frozen in poses of vigilance or despair, their faces etched with pain. Others have experienced a sense of empathy so strong that they feel the fear and desperation of the men who died there. These experiences often leave a lasting impression, as though the battlefield itself communicates the human cost of the conflict. Despite or perhaps because of its haunted reputation, Fort Gregg remains a place of education and remembrance. Historians and tourists alike come to study the fortifications, learn about the siege of Petersburg, and reflect on the courage and sacrifice of the soldiers who fought there. Yet many leave with more than historical knowledge. They carry the memory of unexplained phenomena and the feeling that the spirits of Fort Gregg are still present. The apparitions, phantom sounds, and eerie sensations all serve as a reminder that history is not always confined to books and monuments. At Fort Gregg, the past feels alive, a vivid echo of courage, tragedy, and lingering unrest. Walking the earthworks today, one cannot help but feel the weight of history pressing down. The fort's walls, trenches, and surrounding fields seem to whisper stories of heroism and sacrifice. For those who have witnessed the unexplained, Fort Gregg becomes more than a battlefield. It is a place where the line between past and present feels thin, and where the spirits of soldiers continue to watch, march, and cry out in eternal remembrance. Fort Fisher, located near Virginia Beach, Virginia, stands as a somber monument to the turbulent history of the Civil War and the lingering presence of the past. Constructed as a Confederate fortification, Fort Fisher played a vital role in defending the Chesapeake Bay area from Union incursions. Its strategic position on the coastline allowed Confederate forces to monitor naval movements and protect supply lines, making it a critical stronghold during the conflict. However, like many sites of war, Fort Fisher's history is not just one of military strategy and defense. It is also a place marked by tragedy, sacrifice, and, according to countless reports, paranormal activity. Visitors to the site have described ghostly figures, unexplained sounds, and a heavy, almost tangible presence that seems to echo the pain and courage of those who once stood there. The fort itself, built from earth, timber, and stone, was designed to withstand both artillery fire and amphibious assault. During its operational years, Confederate soldiers manned the walls, standing watch over the bay and surrounding fields. The fort saw skirmishes and small-scale attacks, and while it was never the site of a massive, full-scale battle like some other Civil War locations, the men stationed there endured constant tension, fear, and occasional deadly encounters with Union forces. The combination of anxiety, isolation, and loss has left a lasting imprint on the grounds. And many believe this is why Fort Fisher is considered haunted today. One of the most commonly reported paranormal phenomena involves ghostly soldiers. Visitors often speak of seeing figures dressed in Confederate gray, patrolling the earthworks, or standing silently along the parapets. Some apparitions appear for only a brief moment, watching silently before disappearing into the fog or the shadows of the trees. Others are seen pacing the walls, rifles in hand, as though still guarding the fort from a long-past enemy. There are also reports of Union figures appearing near the outer edges of the fort, often fading from view before they can be approached. These sightings are most frequently reported at dawn or dusk, when the light casts long shadows and the air seems thick with lingering energy. Sounds from the past are another hallmark of Fort Fisher's haunted reputation. Visitors have described hearing the distant boom of cannons, the sharp crack of musket fire, and the shouted commands of officers giving orders long forgotten. Some report hearing the anguished cries of soldiers or the clatter of falling equipment, as if the fort itself is replaying fragments of its history. Paranormal investigators have recorded unexplained audio on the grounds, including low moans, indistinct voices, and even the sound of marching feet when no one is present. These auditory phenomena add to the sense that the fort is not simply a relic of the past, but a living repository of memory and emotion. Certain areas of Fort Fisher are noted for heightened activity. The main earthworks, where soldiers once stood guard, are frequently described as heavy with unseen presence. Visitors walking these areas often report sudden chills, the feeling of being watched, or a sensation of weight pressing down on their shoulders. Shadowy figures have been observed moving along the embankments or disappearing into nearby wooded areas. Some sensitive individuals describe hearing whispers or feeling as though invisible hands are brushing past them. These experiences are concentrated in the most historically significant locations, suggesting that the memories of those who served and died at the fort are deeply embedded in the terrain. The interior structures and barracks associated with Fort Fisher are also sites of eerie encounters. Though many of the original buildings no longer stand, the remaining structures and reconstructed areas have yielded strange phenomena. Visitors have reported doors opening or closing on their own, objects moving inexplicably, and sudden temperature drops. Some have seen ghostly figures appear in windows or doorways, only to vanish when approached. There are even reports of figures resembling officers inspecting the grounds or cadences of drills being replayed in the quiet of the early morning, long after the soldiers who once performed them have gone. The fort's proximity to the water adds another layer to its haunting. The Chesapeake Bay has witnessed countless movements of ships, gunboats, and transports over the decades, and some believe that the spirits of soldiers who guarded the shoreline remain tied to the tides and the fog. On misty mornings, visitors have reported seeing faint lights moving across the water, as if lanterns carried by ghostly sentinels. Others have heard the splash of footsteps or the rhythmic sound of boots on wooden decks, though no boats are present. These spectral impressions create the sense that Fort Fisher is a place where land, water, and history converge to preserve memory. There are also reports of emotional encounters at Fort Fisher. Many visitors describe a sense of sorrow or tension that rises suddenly while walking the fort's grounds. Some feel inexplicable fear, while others are overcome with a deep empathy for the soldiers who served here. The intensity of these feelings suggests that the fort is not only haunted by apparitions, but also by the residual energy of human experience, an imprint of fear, courage, and sacrifice that persists over a century later. Nighttime at Fort Fisher is particularly evocative. Under the moonlight, the fort's walls and surrounding embankments take on a spectral quality. Shadowy figures are more likely to be observed, and many report hearing phantom footsteps or whispers carried on the wind. Lantern-like orbs of light have been recorded moving along the parapets, sometimes fading as witnesses approach. The combination of darkness, fog, and the fort's historic significance creates an atmosphere that is both awe-inspiring and unsettling, leaving visitors with the impression that the past is never truly gone. Today, Fort Fisher stands as a historical landmark, preserved for education and remembrance. Visitors come to explore its earthworks, learn about the strategic importance of the Confederate fort, and reflect on the lives of those who served there. Yet for many, the experience goes beyond history. The ghostly apparitions, unexplained sounds, and heavy sense of presence create a connection to the past that is immediate and visceral. Fort Fisher is not merely a relic of war. It is a place where memory, courage, and lingering spirits converge, allowing visitors to experience a tangible link to the soldiers who once called it home. Fort Ticonderoga, perched on the shores of Lake Champlain in upstate New York, is a place where history and legend intertwine. Built by the French in 1755 during the French and Indian War, the fort later became a key site during the American Revolutionary War, witnessing some of the most significant early military actions in the struggle for independence. Its strategic location made it a prize for both British and American forces, controlling access between New York and Canada. But beyond its historical importance, Fort Ticonderoga has long been associated with the paranormal. Visitors, historians, and staff have reported ghostly apparitions, phantom sounds of battle, and strange, unexplainable phenomena, suggesting that the spirits of soldiers who fought and died here continued to linger among the stone walls and ramparts. During the Revolutionary War, Fort Ticonderoga was the site of multiple engagements. Most notably, in May 1775, Ethan Allen and Benedict Arnold led the Green Mountain Boys in a daring assault that captured the fort from the British in a surprise attack. The fort's artillery, which later played a crucial role in the siege of Boston, symbolized both hope and power for the fledgling American forces. Over the years, soldiers marched across the parade grounds, manned the cannons, and slept in the barracks, facing constant threats from enemy forces. The fort changed hands more than once, and the conflict brought both triumph and tragedy. Many men lost their lives on or near the grounds, and some accounts suggest that the echoes of those battles never truly left the stone walls or the surrounding landscape. One of the most commonly reported paranormal experiences at Fort Ticonderoga is the sighting of ghostly soldiers. Visitors frequently describe seeing figures dressed in Continental Army blue or British red, moving silently through the grounds or along the parapets. Some apparitions are observed standing guard or patrolling the ramparts, their faces etched with determination or exhaustion. Others appear to be engaged in drills or preparing artillery, only to vanish when approached. Witnesses often report that these figures are visible only for a moment, sometimes disappearing into the stone walls or fading into the morning fog. Many say that seeing these apparitions leaves a profound sense of awe, as though they are witnessing history alive in spectral form. The sounds of battle are another hallmark of Fort Ticonderoga's haunted reputation. Visitors have reported hearing distant musket fire, the boom of cannons, and the shouted orders of officers giving commands long forgotten. On quiet mornings, the echoes of combat are said to roll across the parade grounds and the surrounding fields, creating an uncanny feeling that the battles are being replayed in some unseen dimension. Some claim to hear the anguished cries of wounded soldiers or the sharp clatter of falling equipment. Paranormal investigators have recorded unexplained audio, including indistinct voices, footsteps, and even the rumble of artillery, when no reenactments or activities were taking place. These experiences suggest that the fort retains a remarkable connection to its turbulent past. The barracks, magazines, and stone corridors within the fort are frequent sites of ghostly encounters. Visitors report sudden drops in temperature and cold drafts that seem to have no source, along with feelings of unease or being watched. Some have claimed to see figures moving through the hallways, disappearing when approached, while others describe shadowy forms lingering near windows or doors. One particularly chilling report involves the apparition of a soldier appearing near the main gate, standing silently before fading into the ramparts. Staff and volunteers have often mentioned the sensation of footsteps echoing through empty corridors or the faint sound of whispered conversation, as if the walls themselves are holding the voices of those long gone. The fort's strategic location, on a promontory overlooking Lake Champlain, adds another layer to its haunting. The surrounding waters have witnessed countless troop movements, ship battles, and skirmishes over centuries. Some visitors claim to see ghostly figures along the shoreline, either patrolling or moving silently across the docks and piers. On foggy mornings, phantom lights and shapes have been reported moving across the water, as though soldiers are still preparing for battle or signaling their comrades. These maritime apparitions reinforce the idea that Fort Ticonderoga is haunted not only by land-based soldiers, but also by the spirits of those who operated and defended its critical waterways. Emotional experiences at the fort are another recurring theme. Many visitors report sudden feelings of sadness, anxiety, or dread, especially near the areas where the fiercest fighting took place. Others describe the sensation of being closely watched or guided, as if unseen presences are aware of their every movement. These feelings often leave a lasting impression, suggesting that Fort Ticonderoga's history is not only preserved in books or artifacts, but also in the lingering energy of those who experienced its battles firsthand. Sightings of apparitions are not limited to soldiers. Some have reported seeing ghostly figures of civilians or support personnel, including women and children, moving quietly through the grounds. Others have described shadowy figures of officers issuing orders or inspecting the fortifications. Even stray animals, once part of the fort's daily life, have been reportedly glimpsed in spectral form, adding to the impression that the fort remains alive with memory and presence. Fort Ticonderoga also offers evidence through subtle but strange phenomena: sudden drops in temperature, flickering lights in the absence of electrical interference, and the sensation of invisible brushes or touches are frequently reported. Objects have been said to move unexpectedly, doors to open or close without explanation, and the echoes of footsteps to follow visitors along empty corridors. For many, these experiences enhance the sense that the fort is more than a museum. It is a site where the past continues to assert itself in tangible, sometimes unsettling ways. Today, Fort Ticonderoga stands as a place of education, history, and reflection. Visitors come to explore the battlements, tour the barracks, and learn about the pivotal events that shaped the American Revolution. Yet, for many, the fort is more than an educational experience. The ghostly apparitions, phantom sounds of battle, and emotional weight of the site create a unique connection to the past. Fort Ticonderoga remains a place where history lives on, not just in textbooks or reenactments, but in the lingering presence of those who fought, bled, and died within its walls. Fort Niagara, situated at the mouth of the Niagara River in Youngstown, New York, is a historic fortress steeped in centuries of military history and legend. Constructed by the French in 1726, the fort became a key strategic point during the French and Indian War, controlling access to the Great Lakes and the surrounding frontier. Over the years, it also played roles in the American Revolutionary War, the War of 1812, and numerous other military engagements. With its long and turbulent past, Fort Niagara has accumulated a reputation not only as a historic site, but also as a place of paranormal activity. Visitors have reported ghostly figures, mysterious sounds, and unexplained occurrences, suggesting that the spirits of soldiers and settlers who lived, fought, and died there continued to linger within its thick stone walls and echoing corridors. During the French and Indian War, Fort Niagara was a focal point of conflict between the French, British, and various Native American tribes allied with each side. The fort changed hands multiple times and was the site of skirmishes, raids, and sieges. Soldiers stationed there endured harsh winters, disease, and the constant threat of attack. Many lost their lives defending the fort, and their deaths, combined with the trauma and tension of military life, are said to have left a lingering imprint on the grounds. Even today, visitors report sensing a heavy atmosphere in certain areas, as though the fort itself carries the memories of the past. One of the most commonly reported paranormal experiences at Fort Niagara involves the appearance of ghostly soldiers. Visitors often describe seeing figures in 18th-century uniforms standing guard along the ramparts or patrolling the interior grounds. Some are seen moving silently through the parade grounds or appearing briefly in the corridors of the fort before vanishing into the stone walls. Both French and British soldiers have been reportedly observed, sometimes appearing simultaneously, as if caught in a perpetual cycle of tension and vigilance. These apparitions are most often seen in low light, at dawn or dusk, when shadows cast by the fort's massive walls create an eerie atmosphere. The sounds of battle are another frequent occurrence, reported by those visiting Fort Niagara. Witnesses describe hearing the crack of musket fire, the boom of cannons, and the shouted commands of officers. Even when the fort is quiet and no reenactments are taking place, some report hearing the anguished cries of wounded soldiers, the clatter of falling equipment, or the steady march of boots on stone floors. Paranormal investigators have captured audio recordings of indistinct voices, footsteps, and other unexplained sounds that seem to originate from areas where no one else is present. These auditory phenomena contribute to the impression that Fort Niagara remains alive with the echoes of its violent and storied past. The fort's interiors, particularly the stone barracks and powder magazines, are often cited as hotspots for paranormal activity. Visitors have reported sudden drops in temperature, cold drafts, and a feeling of being watched. Some describe seeing shadowy figures moving along hallways or peering from doorways and windows. Others have experienced objects moving on their own or doors opening and closing without explanation. One common report involves seeing a lone soldier standing at the top of the stairway, staring silently before disappearing as the observer approaches. The casemates, where soldiers once slept and stored supplies, are particularly noted for an oppressive energy, leaving visitors with an unshakable sense that they are not alone. Fort Niagara's parade grounds and ramparts also hold their own spectral presence. Visitors walking the expansive grounds have reported hearing the faint cadence of drills, the clatter of weapons, and the voices of men rehearsing commands, as though the soldiers are still performing their daily routines. Some have even claimed to see ghostly formations of troops marching along the embankments, their movements precise and disciplined, only to fade when looked at directly. The combination of sight and sound creates a vivid impression of the fort's historical activity persisting into the present day. The fort's location, at the convergence of the Niagara River and Lake Ontario, adds another layer to its mystique. The water has witnessed centuries of military movement, transport, and conflict. Visitors have reported seeing ghostly figures along the shoreline or the docks, appearing to patrol or signal silently. On foggy mornings, Lantern-like orbs of light are said to float across the river, sometimes accompanied by the distant sound of splashing or the rhythmic echo of oars against water. These maritime apparitions reinforce the notion that Fort Niagara is haunted, not only by soldiers on land but also by those tied to its strategic waterways. Civilian spirits are also said to linger at the fort. Historical records note that families of officers, tradespeople, and others lived on the grounds. Visitors have reported seeing ghostly women moving through the corridors or along the walls, often appearing to search for loved ones lost in battle. Shadowy children have been glimpsed, darting through the parade grounds or peering out from windows. These spectral civilians, combined with the apparitions of soldiers, create a layered sense of history and haunting that spans both military and domestic life. Emotional and physical sensations are frequently described at Fort Niagara. Many visitors report sudden chills, feelings of sadness, or an unshakable sense of dread when walking certain areas of the fort. Some feel as if invisible eyes are watching them, while others experience a pressure or heaviness in the air. These sensations often coincide with areas known to have seen heavy fighting or where soldiers and civilians once lived. Some sensitive individuals report hearing whispers or faint voices carried on the wind, adding to the feeling that the past is not entirely at rest. Today, Fort Niagara is a historical site open to the public, offering tours and educational programs that detail its extensive past. Visitors come to learn about its role in the French and Indian War, the Revolutionary War, and later military history. Yet many leave with experiences that transcend history, having witnessed apparitions, heard unexplained sounds, or felt the pervasive energy of the fort. Fort Niagara remains a place where the echoes of soldiers, civilians, and centuries of conflict continue to resonate, making it a site where history and haunting exist side by side, and where the past feels vividly alive. Fort Stanwix, located in Rome, New York, is a historic site whose walls have witnessed centuries of conflict, courage, and legend. Originally constructed by the British in 1758 during the French and Indian War, the fort later became a key stronghold during the American Revolutionary War. It played a pivotal role in defending the Mohawk Valley against British and Native American forces, and its strategic position made it a crucial point for both logistics and defense. Beyond its historical significance, Fort Stanwix has earned a reputation as one of the most haunted sites in the region. Visitors, historians, and staff have long reported ghostly apparitions, phantom sounds of battle, and strange, unexplained sensations, suggesting that the spirits of soldiers who lived, fought, and died here continue to linger within its stone walls and surrounding grounds. During the Revolutionary War, Fort Stanwix was at the center of intense military activity. In August 1777, British forces under Colonel Barry St. Leger laid siege to the fort as part of a larger plan to capture Albany and split the colonies. The defenders under Colonel Peter Gansevoort held the fort against overwhelming odds, using clever tactics, fortified walls, and sheer determination to resist the siege. The defenders endured artillery bombardment, skirmishes, and the constant threat of attack from both British soldiers and their Native American allies. Casualties occurred on both sides, and the intense pressure and danger left an indelible mark on the fort, one that many believe continues to manifest in paranormal phenomena today. One of the most frequently reported supernatural experiences at Fort Stanwix is the sighting of ghostly soldiers. Visitors often describe seeing figures in Continental Army blue or British red uniforms moving silently through the fort's corridors, standing guard along the walls, or patrolling the ramparts. Some apparitions appear to be engaged in drills or performing duties, while others seem frozen in moments of tension or exhaustion, as if reliving the siege over and over again. These figures often appear only briefly, vanishing when approached or when the observer looks directly at them, leaving behind an eerie sense of presence that is difficult to explain. Sounds of battle are another common aspect of the fort's paranormal reputation. Visitors frequently report hearing the distant crack of musket fire, the boom of cannon, or the shouted commands of officers issuing orders long forgotten. Some describe hearing the anguished cries of wounded soldiers, the clatter of falling weapons, or the shuffle of boots across the stone floors and earthen earthworks. Paranormal investigators have captured unexplained audio recordings on the site, including muffled voices, footsteps, and the low rumble of distant artillery, even when no reenactments or historical demonstrations are taking place. These auditory experiences contribute to the feeling that Fort Stanwix is a living memory of its wartime past. The fort's stone walls, barracks, and casemates are particularly noted for their paranormal activity. Visitors have reported sudden drops in temperature, cold drafts, and an almost palpable sense of being watched. Shadowy figures have been seen moving through hallways or peering from doorways and windows, only to vanish when approached. Some witnesses describe hearing whispers or faint conversations carried through the walls, while others feel an invisible presence brushing past them. The casemates, where soldiers slept and stored munitions, are said to be especially charged with residual energy, leaving visitors with a profound sense of unease. The parade grounds and ramparts also host unusual experiences. Many report seeing the silhouettes of soldiers drilling or marching in formation, their steps precise yet ghostly, disappearing when one moves closer. The rhythmic echo of footsteps across the stone or earth, and the occasional sound of cannon fire, creates a vivid impression that the siege and the daily routines of soldiers are being replayed. Even without visual apparitions, the atmosphere in these areas is described as heavy, tense, and charged with the memories of past conflict. Fort Stanwix is also said to be haunted by civilian spirits. Families of soldiers and local inhabitants who lived near the fort during the war are occasionally reported to appear as shadowy figures moving along the walls or through the surrounding grounds. Some visitors have described ghostly women appearing to tend to soldiers or to search for missing loved ones, while children have been glimpsed darting across the parade grounds or peering from windows. These civilian apparitions add depth to the fort's haunted reputation, suggesting that it is not only the soldiers who linger, but also those caught in the tides of war. Emotional encounters are another aspect of the fort's paranormal presence. Many visitors report sudden feelings of sadness, anxiety, or unease, particularly near areas where fighting was most intense. Some feel as if unseen eyes are following them, or experience a heavy sensation on their shoulders or chest. These impressions often leave a lasting emotional impact, reinforcing the idea that Fort Stanwix is more than just a historical monument. It is a site where the energy of past events remains present and palpable. The fort's location in the Mohawk Valley, surrounded by fields and waterways, adds to its haunted atmosphere. Visitors have reported seeing ghostly figures along the shoreline or the surrounding woods, appearing as if moving to guard or scout the area. On foggy mornings, faint lights are sometimes observed moving along the earthworks, resembling lanterns carried by unseen soldiers. The combination of landscape, architecture, and history creates a compelling environment where the line between past and present feels thin. Today, Fort Stanwix serves as a historical site, preserving its walls, structures, and stories for education and reflection. Visitors come to learn about the fort's strategic importance, the heroism of its defenders, and its place in the broader context of the Revolutionary War. Yet for many, the experience is more than educational. The apparitions, unexplained sounds, and palpable sense of presence create a connection to history that is immediate and deeply affecting. Fort Stanwix remains a place where the echoes of war, courage, and sacrifice continue to resonate, and where the spirits of soldiers and civilians alike seem never to have left. Fort Oswego, located on the shores of Lake Ontario, in Oswego, New York, is a historic site that has witnessed centuries of conflict, strategic maneuvers, and human drama. Originally established by the British in the early 18th century, the fort played a crucial role during the French and Indian War, guarding the vital supply routes along the lake and acting as a strategic outpost for controlling the northern frontier. Over the years, Fort Oswego changed hands multiple times, endured sieges, and witnessed the deaths of soldiers and civilians alike. Today, it stands not only as a testament to colonial and military history, but also as a site reputed to be haunted. Visitors have reported ghostly apparitions, eerie sounds, and unexplained sensations, suggesting that the spirits of those who lived, fought, and perished here continue to linger among its walls and grounds. During the French and Indian War, Fort Oswego was a focal point of intense military activity. The fort's location made it a prime target for French forces, who sought to disrupt British control of Lake Ontario and the surrounding territories. In 1756, the French launched a siege on Fort Oswego, capturing it after intense fighting and heavy bombardment. Many British soldiers and colonial militiamen lost their lives during the assault, while civilians inside the fort faced danger and uncertainty. The aftermath of the battle left the fort in ruins, with bodies buried hastily and the echoes of conflict lingering in the surrounding landscape. It is these layers of tragedy and turmoil that many believe contribute to the fort's haunted reputation. Visitors to Fort Oswego frequently report sightings of ghostly soldiers. Figures dressed in 18th-century British redcoats or colonial blue uniforms are said to patrol the fort's walls or move silently across the parade grounds. Some apparitions appear as if performing drills or inspecting the fortifications, while others seem frozen in moments of tension, crouched behind ramparts or crouching in defensive positions. Witnesses often describe these figures as clear and detailed, yet ephemeral, disappearing when approached or when observed directly. Both French and British soldiers have been reported, suggesting that the fort's history of conflict continues to play out in spectral form. Sounds of battle are a common occurrence at Fort Oswego. Visitors have described hearing the sharp crack of musket fire, the boom of cannons, and the shouted commands of officers giving orders long forgotten. Some have reported the anguished cries of wounded soldiers or the clatter of falling weapons across the stone floors and earthworks. Paranormal investigators have recorded unexplained audio on the grounds, including distant voices, footsteps, and low rumbles resembling artillery fire, even when no reenactments were taking place. These auditory phenomena create an impression that the fort is not merely a static relic, but a living witness to its violent past. The interiors of the fort, including barracks, powder magazines, and storage rooms, are often cited as hotspots for paranormal activity. Visitors have reported sudden drops in temperature, cold drafts, and the sensation of being watched. Shadowy figures have been observed moving along hallways or appearing at doorways and windows, disappearing when approached. Some witnesses have claimed to hear whispers, muffled conversations, or the shuffle of boots on the stone floors. The powder magazines, once filled with gunpowder and munitions, are especially noted for producing an oppressive atmosphere, leaving visitors with a sense of unease and tension. The forts, ramparts, and parade grounds are also sites of unusual phenomena. Many visitors report seeing ghostly figures of soldiers marching in formation or standing guard along the walls. The rhythmic sound of boots, commands being called out, and the clash of weapons is sometimes perceived even in the absence of other people. Some have even described mist-like apparitions moving along the parapets or across the fields, vanishing as they approach the fort's stone walls. The combination of visual and auditory experiences gives the impression that the fort's history is actively replaying itself in spectral form. Fort Oswego's proximity to Lake Ontario contributes to its eerie atmosphere. The lake has long been a conduit for military movements, transport, and conflict, and some believe the spirits of soldiers remain tied to its waters. Visitors have reported seeing ghostly figures along the shoreline or docks, often appearing to patrol or signal silently. Lantern-like orbs of light have been observed floating across the water, and phantom footsteps or splashes have been heard along the docks, reinforcing the impression that the fort's past continues to manifest in the present. Civilian spirits are also said to haunt the fort. Families of soldiers, local settlers, and support personnel who once lived within or near the fort's walls have been reported as shadowy figures moving through the barracks or parade grounds. Ghostly women have been seen searching for loved ones lost in battle, while children are occasionally glimpsed running along the earthworks or peering from windows. These apparitions add depth to the fort's haunted reputation. suggesting that both military and civilian experiences are preserved in spectral form. Emotional experiences are common for visitors to Fort Oswego. Many report sudden feelings of sadness, anxiety, or unease while walking through the fort's most historically significant areas. Some feel an invisible presence, as though unseen eyes are following them, or experience a physical pressure that seems to weigh down on their shoulders. These sensations often coincide with locations where the heaviest fighting occurred, reinforcing the sense that the fort carries the emotional weight of its past. Today, Fort Oswego stands as a historical site and museum, educating the public about its role in the French and Indian War and subsequent conflicts. Visitors come to explore its stone walls, earthworks, and historic buildings, but for many, the experience extends beyond education. Ghostly apparitions, phantom sounds of battle, and the palpable sense of presence create a unique connection to the past. Fort Oswego remains a place where the echoes of soldiers, civilians, and centuries of conflict continue to resonate, offering a vivid reminder that history is never truly gone. Fort Edward, located in upstate New York along the Hudson River, is a site steeped in history, conflict, and lingering mystery. Established in 1755 during the French and Indian War, the fort served as a key British stronghold, controlling access to the northern frontier and acting as a staging point for troops moving between Albany and the Northern Territories. Its strategic importance made it a frequent target for attacks and skirmishes, and soldiers stationed there endured harsh conditions, disease, and the constant threat of enemy assault. Today, Fort Edward stands not only as a historic site but also as a place widely regarded as haunted. Visitors have reported ghostly apparitions, unexplained sounds, and an unsettling atmosphere, all suggesting that the spirits of soldiers who lived, fought, and died here continue to inhabit the grounds. During the French and Indian War, Fort Edward was at the center of numerous military campaigns. British troops fortified the site to protect the Hudson River corridor and serve as a base for offensive operations against French forces and their Native American allies. Life at the fort was grueling. Soldiers faced harsh winters, limited supplies, and constant vigilance against attack. Many men lost their lives to combat, disease, or accidents, and the fort became a place where courage and tragedy coexisted. The heavy loss of life and the tension of ongoing conflict are often cited as reasons why the site is associated with paranormal activity today. One of the most commonly reported supernatural experiences at Fort Edward involves sightings of ghostly soldiers. Visitors frequently describe seeing figures in British redcoats or colonial militia uniforms moving silently along the fort's walls, ramparts, or interior grounds. Some apparitions appear to be performing their duties, standing guard, or patrolling the perimeter. Others are observed crouching behind earthworks or moving cautiously through the barracks, as if still engaged in the vigilance demanded by wartime life. These figures are often visible only for a fleeting moment before vanishing, leaving behind a chilling impression of presence. Witnesses often report that the apparitions are detailed and tangible, yet ephemeral, giving the sense that the fort's history is playing out in spectral form. Sounds of battle are another frequent phenomenon reported at Fort Edward. Visitors have claimed to hear distant musket fire, the booming of cannons, and the shouted commands of officers giving orders long forgotten. Some have reported hearing the cries of wounded men, the clash of weapons, and the shuffle of boots along the stone and earth floors. Paranormal investigators have recorded unexplained audio, including voices, footsteps, and metallic clanging resembling artillery fire, even when the site is empty of reenactors or staff. These sounds create the impression that the fort is still alive, with echoes of its violent past, replaying fragments of history for those sensitive enough to perceive them. The interiors of Fort Edward, including barracks, powder magazines, and officer quarters, are hotspots for reported paranormal activity. Visitors often experience sudden drops in temperature, cold drafts, or the sensation of being watched. Shadowy figures are sometimes observed, moving along hallways or standing at doorways, disappearing when approached. Some witnesses report faint whispers or muffled conversations that seem to emanate from the stone walls themselves. The powder magazines, once critical for storing gunpowder and munitions, are particularly noted for an oppressive energy, leaving visitors with feelings of unease and heightened awareness of the fort's violent history. The fort's ramparts and parade grounds also harbor spectral activity. Ghostly soldiers are reported marching in formation, standing guard, or practicing drills, their steps echoing across the grounds. Mist-like figures are occasionally seen moving along the embankments, vanishing as observers approach. The combination of visual and auditory phenomena creates a vivid sense that the fort's past is actively replaying itself, allowing visitors to witness a form of living history imbued with lingering spirits. Fort Edward's location along the Hudson River adds another layer to its haunted atmosphere. The river has long been a conduit for troop movements, supplies, and communication, and some believe that soldiers' spirits remain tied to the water and surrounding landscape. Visitors have reported seeing ghostly figures along the riverbanks or docks, moving silently as though on patrol. On foggy mornings, faint lights or lantern-like orbs are sometimes seen floating across the water, accompanied by the distant sound of footsteps or splashing, further reinforcing the fort's spectral reputation. Civilian spirits are said to haunt Fort Edward as well. Families of soldiers, local settlers, and support personnel who once lived on or near the fort are occasionally reported as shadowy figures moving through the barracks or parade grounds. Ghostly women have been seen searching for loved ones lost in battle, while children are sometimes glimpsed darting through hallways or across the grounds. These apparitions suggest that the fort preserves not only the memory of military conflict, but also the experiences of those who lived alongside the soldiers. During times of hardship and danger, many visitors describe emotional encounters at Fort Edward. Sudden feelings of fear, sadness, or unease are commonly reported, particularly near areas where fighting or disease took a heavy toll. Some report a sense of being closely watched or experience an unexplained pressure on their shoulders or chest. These sensations often coincide with areas of historical significance, suggesting that the fort carries the emotional imprint of past events and the spirits of those who endured them. Today, Fort Edward stands as both a historical landmark and a place of reflection. Visitors come to explore its stone walls, earthen ramparts, and reconstructed buildings while learning about its role in the French and Indian War. Yet for many, the experience extends beyond history. Apparitions, phantom sounds of battle, and a palpable sense of presence create a profound connection to the past. Fort Edward remains a site where the echoes of soldiers, civilians, and centuries of conflict continue to resonate, offering a haunting reminder that history is never truly gone. Fort William Henry, located at the southern tip of Lake George in New York, is a site steeped in history, tragedy, and lingering mystery. Constructed by the British in 1755 during the French and Indian War, the fort was intended to protect the northern frontier and serve as a staging point for operations against French forces in Canada. Its strategic location along the lake made it a vital point for supply lines and troop movements, but it also made it a target. The fort's history is marked by battles, sieges, and one of the most infamous incidents of the war, the massacre following the fort's surrender in 1757. Today, Fort William Henry stands as a reconstructed historical site and museum, yet it is also renowned for its paranormal activity. Visitors frequently report ghostly apparitions, strange sounds, and sensations that suggest the spirits of soldiers and civilians who lived, fought, and died there continued to linger. The fort's most notorious moment came during the siege of 1757. French forces, aided by Native American allies, surrounded Fort William Henry after a week-long artillery bombardment. Facing overwhelming odds and dwindling supplies, the British garrison, commanded by Lieutenant Colonel George Monro, surrendered. They were promised safe passage to Fort Edward, but during their withdrawal, Native American warriors attacked the retreating soldiers and civilians. Hundreds were killed in the ensuing chaos, an event remembered as the Fort William Henry Massacre. The combination of battlefield deaths, betrayal, and intense fear left an indelible mark on the fort, and many believe that the spirits of those who perished have never truly left. One of the most commonly reported paranormal phenomena at Fort William Henry is the appearance of ghostly soldiers. Visitors have described seeing figures in 18th century British uniforms patrolling the fort's walls or standing silently on the ramparts. Some apparitions appear to be carrying muskets, others seem to be performing drills or standing guard. Witnesses often report that these figures vanish when approached, as if they are trapped in a moment of time, eternally reliving their duties or the terror of the siege. French soldiers have also been reported, sometimes appearing near the reconstructed outer defenses, moving cautiously, as if advancing on the fort during the siege. Sounds of battle are another hallmark of the fort's haunted reputation. Visitors often report hearing the boom of cannon fire, the sharp crack of muskets, and the shouted commands of officers giving orders long forgotten. Some have described hearing the screams of soldiers and civilians alike, echoing through the parade grounds and over the ramparts. Paranormal investigators have captured audio recordings of indistinct voices, footsteps, and other unexplained sounds. Even when the fort is empty, the combination of auditory and visual phenomena gives the impression that the siege and massacre are being replayed in fragments, allowing the fort's tragic history to manifest in the present. The interiors of Fort William Henry, including the barracks, officers' quarters, and powder magazines, are frequently reported as hotspots for paranormal activity. Visitors have described sudden drops in temperature, cold drafts, and the sensation of being watched. Shadowy figures are sometimes seen moving through hallways or standing at doorways, disappearing when approached. Whispers, footsteps, and muffled conversations are common, giving the impression that the fort itself holds the voices of those long gone. The powder magazines, once essential for storing gunpowder and munitions, are particularly noted for an oppressive atmosphere, leaving visitors with a sense of tension and unease. The fort's parade grounds and ramparts also host spectral activity. Ghostly soldiers are often reported marching in formation, standing guard, or practicing drills. Some appear crouched or wounded, as if replaying the final moments of battle. Mist-like apparitions sometimes drift along the earthworks or vanish into the surrounding trees, creating an eerie sense of movement. The combination of visual and auditory experiences contributes to the feeling that the fort is alive with memories of its violent past. Fort William Henry's location along Lake George adds another layer to its haunted nature. The lake has long been a conduit for military movements, transport, and communication, and some believe the spirits of soldiers remain tied to its waters. Visitors have reported seeing ghostly figures along the shoreline, appearing to patrol or signal silently. Lantern-like orbs of light are sometimes seen floating across the water, accompanied by the distant sound of splashing or oars striking the lake. These maritime apparitions reinforce the fort's spectral reputation and highlight the continued presence of the past in the natural surroundings. Civilian spirits are also said to haunt the fort. Families of soldiers, camp followers, and other non-combatants who lived within or near the fort are occasionally reported as shadowy figures moving through barracks or along the parade grounds. Some visitors describe ghostly women searching for lost loved ones, while children are occasionally glimpsed darting through the halls or along the walls. These apparitions suggest that the fort preserves not only the memory of military conflict, but also the lives of those caught in the chaos of war. Many visitors to Fort William Henry describe emotional encounters. Sudden feelings of fear, sadness, or unease are common, particularly near areas where the most violent events occurred. Some feel as if unseen eyes are watching them or experience a heavy sensation on their shoulders or chest. These experiences often coincide with the locations of the massacre or intense combat, reinforcing the impression that the fort is charged with the emotional residue of its history. Today, Fort William Henry stands as a historical and educational site, attracting visitors who come to explore its walls, barracks, and reconstructed buildings, while learning about the tragic events of the French and Indian War. Yet for many, the fort offers more than a history lesson. The ghostly apparitions, phantom sounds, and palpable presence of spirits provide a tangible connection to the past. Fort William Henry remains a site where history and haunting converge, allowing visitors to witness the lingering echoes of soldiers, civilians, and the human cost of war. Fort George, located in Niagara-on-the-Lake, Ontario, is a historic site that stands as a testament to the turbulent events of the War of 1812. Built by the British in 1796, the fort became a focal point of military activity during the early 19th century, guarding the Niagara River and the surrounding region from American incursions. Its strategic location made it a critical outpost, controlling access to Upper Canada and serving as a staging ground for troops and supplies. Over the centuries, Fort George has gained a reputation not only for its historical significance, but also for its paranormal activity. Visitors have reported ghostly apparitions, unexplained sounds, and eerie sensations, suggesting that the spirits of soldiers who fought and died here continued to linger within its stone walls and surrounding grounds. During the War of 1812, Fort George was the site of intense combat. In May 1813, American forces launched a surprise attack on the fort, successfully capturing it from the British after heavy fighting. The battle was fierce, with soldiers on both sides sustaining casualties as they engaged in close-quarters combat and artillery exchanges. The fort's defenders were forced to retreat across the Niagara River, leaving behind supplies, weaponry, and many of their fallen comrades. The aftermath of the battle left the fort in ruins, and the landscape became a somber reminder of the human cost of war. The combination of loss, fear, and violence has long been cited as a source of the fort's haunting. One of the most frequently reported paranormal phenomena at Fort George involves sightings of ghostly soldiers. Visitors often describe seeing figures in British redcoats or American blue uniforms patrolling the fort's ramparts, standing silently along the walls, or moving through the barracks. Some apparitions appear to be carrying muskets or inspecting the fortifications, while others seem frozen in moments of tension, crouching behind barriers or peering cautiously around corners. Witnesses often report that these figures vanish when approached, leaving a lingering impression of presence and a sense that the fort's history is still being played out in spectral form. Sounds of battle are another common occurrence at Fort George. Visitors have reported hearing the distant boom of cannons, the sharp crack of muskets, and the shouted commands of officers giving orders long forgotten. Some describe hearing the cries of wounded soldiers, the clash of swords, and the shuffle of boots on stone and earth floors. Paranormal investigators have captured unexplained audio recordings, including muffled voices, footsteps, and metallic clangs resembling musket fire, even when no reenactments or staff are present. These auditory phenomena contribute to the feeling that the fort is not simply a static relic of the past, but a site where the echoes of combat continue to resonate. The interior structures of Fort George, including the barracks, officer quarters, and powder magazines, are often cited as hotspots for paranormal activity. Visitors have reported sudden drops in temperature, cold drafts, and the sensation of being watched. Shadowy figures are sometimes seen moving through corridors or standing near doorways, disappearing when approached. Some witnesses report hearing whispers, faint conversations, or the shuffle of invisible footsteps. The powder magazines once used to store gunpowder and munitions are particularly noted for their heavy atmosphere, leaving visitors with a sense of tension and unease that seems to hang in the air long after the fort's military use ended. The fort's ramparts and parade grounds are also areas of notable spectral activity. Visitors have described seeing ghostly soldiers marching in formation, standing guard, or performing drills. Mist-like apparitions occasionally drift along the walls or across the grounds, vanishing as observers approach. The combination of visual and auditory phenomena creates a vivid impression that the fort's history is actively replaying itself, allowing visitors to witness fragments of the battle long after the cannons have gone silent. Fort George's location along the Niagara River adds another layer to its haunting. The river was central to troop movements and supply lines, and some believe that soldiers' spirits remain tied to the water. Visitors have reported seeing ghostly figures along the shoreline, appearing to patrol or signal silently. On foggy mornings, lantern-like orbs of light have been observed floating over the river, accompanied by the faint sound of splashing or footsteps. These maritime apparitions reinforce the impression that the fort is still alive with the presence of those who once fought to defend it. Civilian spirits are also said to haunt Fort George. Families of soldiers, camp followers, and local inhabitants who once lived within or near the fort are occasionally seen as shadowy figures moving through the barracks or along the parade grounds. Some visitors report seeing ghostly women searching for loved ones lost in battle, while children have been glimpsed running through hallways or along the walls. These apparitions suggest that the fort preserves not only the memory of military conflict, but also the lives of those caught in the chaos surrounding the battle. Emotional and physical sensations are another common aspect of Fort George's haunted reputation. Many visitors report sudden feelings of fear, sadness, or unease, particularly in areas where fighting or deaths were most intense. Some feel as if unseen eyes are following them, or experience an inexplicable pressure on their shoulders or chest. These experiences often coincide with historically significant locations, reinforcing the idea that the fort carries the emotional and psychic imprints of its past. Today, Fort George stands as a preserved historical site and museum, offering visitors a chance to explore its walls, barracks, and reconstructed buildings, while learning about its strategic importance and role in the War of 1812. Yet for many, the fort provides more than a history lesson. The ghostly apparitions, phantom sounds of battle, and palpable sense of presence create a direct connection to the past, making Fort George a place where history and haunting coexists. Visitors often leave with the impression that the spirits of soldiers, civilians, and the echoes of war are never truly gone, lingering in the fort's walls, corridors, and the surrounding landscape. And so, our chilling journey through Virginia's haunted battlefields comes to a close. These fields, soaked in history and sorrow, continue to echo with the restless spirits of those who never found peace. Whether the stories are truth or legend, one thing remains certain: the past is never truly gone. As you return to the safety of your own home, remember the whispers in the wind and the shadows that linger where history was written in blood. Keep your lights on, your heart steady, and your mind open. For the spirits of Virginia watch still, and their stories are far from over.